if we ceased enforcing our financial policy on the rest of the world, then our money would probably collapse very quickly.
There's never been a government that wasn't owned by the rich.
If there's no store of value, then it's not a money.
They're selling you that we're going to do all this stuff and we're going to tax the rich, but it's never happened.
DJ Badger coming at you live with Dad Influence.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Dad Influence. Today I got good old Jonathan and classic Tawnya. Tanya's been here before, so I'll give Jonathan a second to introduce himself when he stops buffering.
Okay.
Right?
No, there he is.
I'm the one who's slowing down. It's me and not Daniel.
No, this time it was you.
Oh my god. Oh.
I saw you froze.
Okay. Oh my god. I see Daniel freeze. What is happening? Why do we live in a world of ice?
Well, you know, every day I'm buffering. But no, go ahead and introduce yourself. Give a quick rundown on your ideals and what you believe. You got any kids?
Okay.
What's the situation? Sure. Tell them about the old job you had there too.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jonathan Adcock. I'm a big politics shit poster, and I am a former kindergarten teacher. Have big opinions on childcare. And I am a big D Democrat, hardcore progressive. Okay? Let the men wear the women's clothing.
All right, where's the mute button? Oh, I'm just kidding.
That's progressive.
Okay. Yes. Okay, by definition it is, okay? I'm not talking about parties here, okay? Okay, if Daniel is like, I think dudes should marry dudes, and any man should drink a fruity cocktail if he wants it. That's a progressive idea, okay? That's not conservative.
That's a libertarian idea, my good sir.
Okay, we're talking about one spectrum. Libertarians can be progressive. This is not a party thing, okay? there's a one-line spectrum of progressive and conservative. And progress, okay? Sometimes libertarians can be progressive.
So you're using progressive, just to be clear here, sense. as a label to replace the old label of revolutionary.
Well, not necessarily. So, like, have you read The Scarlet Letter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, the guy who wrote that, Nathaniel Hawthorne. This guy, you know, he's like living in the 1600s, and he's like super progressive. Like, his wife is like equal to him in the marriage, and the characters that he writes about, it's like, okay, well, in the book, the guy fucks up, and it's all his fault, and he's like ruining the lives of this woman and her daughter, and like Pearl, the little girl in the story, is like, she's like one of the most feminist like literary characters that you're gonna see from this period, where it's like she doesn't just like act like a girl, like a girly girl, but she's also not like a boy. She's not like counterculture. She just acts like herself. She like hits the boys with sticks, and she's like, I wear pretty dresses, and it's like, that's a really progressive idea. And so that's how I would describe progressive. But I am also, I guess, I'm a little more leaning in the progressive and like the political, like the outright political sense too. A little more on the justice stem sides, but I would say in between that and a moderate. Because I'm a little neoliberal. Okay, I like to wear my capitalism crown.
I've had a lot of criticism in the past. I've had a lot of criticism in the past for something that I have an issue with personally. I feel like progressives hijacked a lot of the libertarian arguments, to be fair.
Right.
And if you look at the timing and all that, like, to be fair, a lot of that was a hijacking. And in the same way, it's kind of fair to say that libertarianism did hijack a lot of arguments from anarchism, the left-leaning anarchism from before that. And communism.
Left-wing anarchism, like, created libertarianism.
Exactly. And to not give homage to that, which some libertarians are hesitant to do so, I have a huge problem with.
Got it.
Yes. So I have an issue with that. I feel like you have to pay homage to the ones that came before. You know, your idea wouldn't exist without, you know, these guys, so you have to give them credit.
Yeah.
Like
we live in America, not Italy, okay?
When I say libertarian, though, I mean the left.
And to be real, if you look
Italian people from 1846.
When you look at the demographics for this channel, believe it or not, we get listened to from all over the freaking place. it's funny.
Love
It's like 12 people, but they're everywhere.
I told
So-
people.
So what I would say to the hijacking thing is I think like everybody takes like certain ideas and they kind
right.
of put their own spin on them and like maybe like improve or not in some ways. So
well,
like,
where I would call something a hijacking, personally, like I don't care about you remixing. There's a difference to me in remixing and hijacking. Remixing is when you make an argument made by someone else because it makes your point, right? Hijacking is when you make an argument made by someone else because it sounds good and you don't actually agree with it. It's kind of the argument, in my opinion, it's when progressives say, my body, my choice, and then argue for forced vaccination.
I think
you see what I'm saying? So you can't have both opinions. You're making a principled argument and then switching to a nuanced argument. You can have one or the other.
So I think you can have a nuanced and principled argument at the same time, right? Like you can have like a certain idea. So like if you say, and I mean I hate the phrase, defund the police from my perspective. I know you actually want to defund the police, but one reason that I don't really like that saying is because like people say like, oh, defund the police, and then people are like, what does that mean? It's like, okay, well I have to get into this whole nuanced argument of like whatever. About like police brutality, and I don't actually.
So you can...
Yeah, exactly. Right. A phrase I think should definitely be indicative of what it's supposed to be. But I think you can have both a principled position on something and also be like, well, there's like a little nuance, like in what way it goes with that. So with the vaccine thing, I don't want to get like too heavily into that for this one. But just 1 second, like I don't want to get too heavily into that for this one, but. I think the argument would be from the progressive side that like my body, my choice does apply, but the reason that vaccine mandates would be important for like in a government sense or in like a school sense would be like you would be infringing upon others, not necessarily like their rights, by like putting them at unnecessary risk or something.
Right,
so like,
but you realize that's the Republican argument for why abortion should be illegal is that you can have the right to your body and all of that in all of these other areas, but in this case you're putting another body in danger, and because you're putting another body in danger, it's not okay. So that's kind of the argument that I'm making. You're making a absolutist principle argument, saying that this is an absolute principle, and then turning on that absolute principle when it's inconvenient, and that's where I have an issue. It's like I'm okay with you saying, "Hey, look, abortion should be legal because sometimes women aren't ready. Sometimes there's these medical conditions. Sometimes there's this. Sometimes there's that. It's not fair to say that just because there's a life here that I have an obligation to provide for it. Like these are actual principled arguments that are absolutism." Right? But you're still making a nuanced argument. So my point is when you make an absolute and you say that these kind of decisions should be between, medical decisions, but should be between a person and their doctor, then medical decisions should be between a person and their doctor. You can't, that is an absolute argument. You can't sit here and go, but then when this happens, you know what I mean? Because in that situation, you're just saying what sounds good in the moment.
I don't think most people.
Does that make sense?
This also depends. Yes, I do understand. Like, I think it also depends on like.
Which is what you were criticizing Republicans for.
Well, if you're talking about somebody who's like really thought about their positions, that's fair. I don't think most people who are on almost any side have actually thought about like why I believe this certain thing. But like if you're. but like if you're talking to somebody who's actually thought about like the my body my choice thing, it's usually it usually is either absolutist. So like I know you guys know the violinist thing because you talked about it in another podcast, but the lady who wrote that was actually like an absolutist, and she would say like my body my choice in like literally any circumstance,
right,
and there's no variation. But I think Democrats, when they say that, it's not that argument in that like it is fully like my body my choice, right? But it wouldn't be if I considered like the fetus like a human with moral consideration. Like that.
It's kind of like me screaming taxation is theft and then going, but we can have these taxes.
Well, no. What I'm saying is the critical argument is Republicans believe it's like a human life with moral consideration, and Democrats don't. It's like they don't agree on that point. It's not my body, my choice or not. It's, well, we both believe in my body, my choice. It's just one, I believe the fetus has moral consideration.
Which is why, in my opinion, it's a hijacked and disingenuous argument to make that argument.
Well, no, right? If people are arguing on the merits of the life, it's still,
unless you're literally arguing in an absolutist sense, I don't think it's fair to use absolutist arguments, because then that's kind of like I said. This is where we get all these charges of hypocrisy coming back and forth. It's because they are being hypocrites. You can't sit here and make an absolutist argument if you don't believe in an absolute principle. Now, if you believe in an absolute principle, that's fair. Now, to be fair, like, you gotta, like, this is something I want you to really you all to understand. I was an absolutist on pro-life prior to the vaccine stuff. That's what opened my mind, was me going, okay, well, now the argument of some other life is at stake to my bodily choices. This is a little bit, now I'm starting to kind of understand how this could be a little bit sketchy, to have the moral principle of the society has a right to my body because some other life is at stake.
I don't think any Democrats would argue that your body, your choice allows you to infringe upon like other people. That's why I'm saying, like, they don't believe the fetus is like a human with moral consideration, because they're not actually like killing a human life. That's just what Republicans say, and that's the key argument. So, like, I don't think Republicans believe it's okay, like, your body, your choice. I think both sides do believe in my body, my choice.
This is kind of where I didn't move to pro-choice. I wouldn't even argue that I moved to pro-choice. I moved to I don't know. And that's kind of where it's like, because I've said, like, you have that side of the argument, and then you also have the other side of, like I said, there is a lot of consent situations, a hot air balloon analogy that I've raised before, which is kind of like, if you invite someone onto your hot air balloon and you go up in the air, you can't just evict them and go, okay, now I don't want you on my hot air balloon, and just push them off. You have a moral obligation to take them to safety. And because the sex is a consensual act, usually, that creates a baby, and you know this, you technically did invite that baby into your body. You see what I'm saying? So there's an argument there. So it's like, from both sides of this, I can see where both sides kind of have a point. And to sit and to me, I know this isn't what we came here to talk about, but just as a quick aside, I think to me, the fact that everyone pretends like this is a clear-cut, easily defined issue, this is one of those situations where that's very rare, where you have a lot of moral principles colliding. And it's a very unique situation. In that like, there's no other situation that creates life, dude. Like, it's a very unique situation to be talking about, and there's not really many things that we can morally compare to really flesh it out. But to go into the actual consideration, I'll let you open up, or if Tawnya wants to get a word in edgewise. We've been talking for a while.
Yeah, get at me, Tawnya.
Get 'em.
Okay, I'll go into the debate that we've been talking about, since I mean that's where we're at right now. I would say that the biggest difference between the abortion and vaccines is that vaccines is force, abortion is choice. Like, the whole vaccine mandate, like, that is force.
I actually get what you're saying there. Kind of the difference between compelled speech and freedom of speech. It's different to tell someone what they have to say rather than to tell someone what they can't say.
And whereas abortion is a choice, and abortion is also a choice that can be changed. People's choices can be influenced in different ways, in different manners. Like, we can work on economies, we can work on getting men out of prisons, we can work on all kinds of things that will stop abortion. We don't do that, though. We would much rather just say my body, my choice, than to actually work on the issues that cause women to want to have abortion.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm much bigger on the side of, stop abortions from happening in the first place, then because I don't like abortion. I am pro-choice to a degree. I don't think I'm really not like a full even third trimesters are okay. If it's not out of the body, you can kill it, like kind of thing. But I think there's a certain area of development where there's I don't really think there's moral consideration, but after a certain point, I think it's kind of developed enough. That's just me, though.
I think that it's dangerous. It's dangerous to deconstruct human life in the manner of where we compare, call human life fetus or embryo. And the main reason being is that it does have value, and the way we create life has value as well. If we keep deconstructing it, we're just going to keep having, we're going to move farther and farther away from natural reproduction into test tube babies. That's kind of scary.
Why is that scary? That's pretty cool.
Not really.
Why?
I kind of enjoy
primitive this.
You're
I can use the words.
That gives governments and major corporations access to create human.
Yeah, but listen, I'm a big life is life kind of person. I don't really care where you've come from. I think even an advanced enough AI, I would consider to be a person with the same amount of moral consideration as you or I. So no matter how a person is grown, I think it just matters that they are.
Which is another thing that I raised a million times whenever we would have any of those abortion arguments in group, was always exactly that, which was, hey man, we also have to figure out what exactly is the line where a person is. Because number one, we're developing AI to a point where we could be recreating slavery. And if you don't think about it like that, you literally are. If you create something with a level of consciousness to a certain point, don't you have to give it rights? What happens when we contact any kind of alien life? How do we know it's not a cow and it's a person? We have to have a line.
Freezing test tube babies, and they have judges that have considered them goods and chattels. That's modern day slavery.
Hang on. So the test tube, is it a grown baby or is it an embryo?
It's an embryo. It's an embryo at this point. And they put them in a cryogenic state, which, if we really value human life, why are we freezing it in a cryogenic state, first of all? And then second of all, why do we have judges calling these things goods and chattels?
Okay, so I have a question. My best friend is a lesbian. Oh wait, you're also a lesbian, right? Okay, cool. Let's say that you or my friend wanted to get pregnant, right? And you're like, I'll give you $50 for your sperm. If you pay me for my sperm, is that chattel slavery?
That depends on the contract, I guess.
Well, does it? Because I would just say no, no, because you're growing the person, the person is birthed, and then they're fine as themselves, right?
Also has to put it in you. You're not gonna make a baby in a petri dish and then grow it and then put it in me. You're not gonna do that. Yeah. You have to go to a third party.
You can do that though. We can do that today, I'm pretty sure.
We can, but you're not going to specifically do that. We would have to go through a third party intermediary.
Yeah, maybe it costs a little more money, but listen, okay? Are my guys slaves?
They could be.
I don't understand that.
I think what she's trying to point to. I'll just as a quick point.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
When you do a lot of that stuff, the leftover genetic material, they a lot of times they put as part of the contract that they can do whatever the hell they want with it. And is that what you're getting at? Whereas you have consented to what you want to do with this specific sperm and this specific egg, the other sperm that are contained within your semen and the other eggs that might have been collected, you didn't consent.
Oftentimes when you do IVF, you will make 4 or 5 embryos, right? And if the first one takes, what happens to the other 4? It's
in
actually
terms of like possession.
yeah, absolutely. Do
Ah.
they get rid of it? Do they keep it? Do they put it in a cryogenic state? What do they do?
I don't know. I think in that case, you still own those because typically.
There was this
Mhm.
one case where this woman, she had done IVF and she had only wanted one baby, and they had 3 of the embryos that took, and she ended up having triplets. She sued the doctor.
That's hilarious.
I mean, and she won.
That's really funny. Okay. Okay, I feel like we should actually get to the
All right, let's get to the topic at hand. I'll let you give your opening statement.
That's interesting.
Typically, that's healthcare, right?
I'll let each person get their opening statement. We'll go ladies first, since we've been talking it up.
We're
talking about universal healthcare in general and what we think about it, what we think the best way to do it would be, and whatnot, and so forth, and whatever.
Honestly,
what's the best way to make sure everybody's healthy?
Teach people to some very basic medicine. I think it should be required.
I know me and you have talked about this before, and I actually fully agree with you. I think that, like, first aid and a lot of that stuff is very, very useful. I was taught a lot of it. My mom was a nurse. Mm-hmm. So, like, I've had a lot of friends that have gotten hurt, and it's useful stuff to know. So I agree with that. What else?
It should be required throughout the education system, K through 12, to learn basic medicine. Then you're not actually, having to go to the hospital over stupid things. Like, another good one would be, maybe making employers not be able to require.
Hang on, I'm gonna put that in my notes because that's the thing that you just said that I love that. Hang on, because you're gonna. I think you guys are gonna be kind of very surprised at how medicine works in Korea. Hang on.
Is that where you're at? Is in Korea?
And not now. I used to live there. I lived there for 4 years.
Awesome.
It was very cool. Yeah, especially the medicine.
I'm assuming the good Korea, the South Korea, right?
No, I was actually Kim Jong-un's personal slave.
Oh, I figured. Oh, Lord.
In Korea, and she loves it. She absolutely loves everything about it.
Yes, I met a lot of students there too. They have similar feelings. Actually, my lesbian friend's wife was a student there.
Yes.
Yeah, she's Russian. She's very fun. Okay, so yeah, continue. Don't go to the hospital for stupid things and
no, don't go to the hospital for stupid things. A lot of that has to do with employers also requiring medical notes just for having a sick day. I don't think that should be a thing. Like, they shouldn't require that. That's almost it's expensive.
Not that it means anything. And that's another thing that I just to side note. I know I'm interrupting. I'm trying not to, but just a side note, real quick. But just a side note, but like, it doesn't mean anything. You can go in there and say my stomach hurts, and they'll give you a doctor's note. That just means you were there. It doesn't mean you were actually sick. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Wait, can I chime in on that one?
Yes, please do.
Because one time my stomach actually did hurt, okay? But I went to the hospital, and this was when I was in college, and I asked for a doctor's note, and the dude gave me a note that said, there are no observable symptoms of this guy's stomach ache. And I was like, that's not helpful. That's not my teacher I was making, but I wasn't, my stomach hurt. So sometimes, I'll say sometimes doctors are just like, fuck your feelings, okay? I can't tell you a stomach ache.
Alternatively, I got a doctor's note one time for taking my cousin, driving him to the doctor's appointment.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. That's good.
He was sick.
On that note, though, the one good thing that COVID did bring around with medical care is telehealth. So now you only have to pay like $20 to get a doctor's note.
Oh my god, I'm gonna blow your freaking noodle later. Okay.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, like I said, I lived in South Korea for 4 years, and I experienced their single payer system, as in there is only government healthcare. There is no private healthcare. There technically is, but it's all a scam. And I mean, like, it is a literal scam that people try to do on old people. So you cannot get
here.
Nah, okay, listen. that's a whole other thing. It is literally like a guy trying to give old people like cards, being like, "Hey, here's how you get like special extra insurance," but it's not real. It's like literal scam. This is opposed to a multi-payer system where there is private and public insurance, where the government has an insurance program, and there's also private, which is most of the world, but Canada and Korea and a few other countries have single payer. I think there's only like 4 single payer countries in the whole world. And I think single payer is amazing because I've lived in it. I think it's a little less good in Canada, but in Korea, you do pay for medical care. It's just very cheap, as opposed to Canada where it's free. And we can talk about that later. And I'll tell you some shocking price points.
All right.
Now,
so,
how is Canada's different?
It's all free, like literally everything.
Ooh. So that's different than Korea's. You still have to pay in Korea?
Yeah, you have to pay in Korea, and I'll get into that later.
Okay. Okay. For my little opening thing, I would like to make a very big point here that might piss off a bunch of my libertarian friends.
Come on, Daniel.
Which is that if you're gonna offer me up the either or of healthcare or bombing people across the world or any of that, then I'm gonna go healthcare. So let me just make this point that it's not an either or value judgment. This isn't me saying I want this and not that. This is me saying that I don't like anything that has that's not voluntary. Anything that's involuntary funded, I have an issue with. This is the reason why I have an issue. Like I said before when we were talking about the cops, it's why I have an issue with the cops, and I totally support them when they intervene and it's supposed to be. Because the principle is the issue.
One second. Because for anyone who's confused, Daniel and I were talking before the podcast about the police. So that way nobody's like, wait, did I just miss like 20 seconds of video or something?
No, we were talking before the podcast about the police, and it was kind of me making the point that, like, I don't support having police in general simply because they're funded through involuntary means, right? But if they are in the case, I will give them the same support for their actions that I would any individual citizen in that case. So if you have a cop, right, and they did a certain action, if an individual citizen would have done that same action and I would excuse it, then I will excuse it on the part of the cop. If that makes any sense. So it's kind of like if a guy is assaulting a cop and a cop shoots him, then, I mean, if it was an individual, I would defend that as well. So it's not anything. But if a cop just pulls his gun out and shoots a guy because he's running away from him and he was trying to arrest him, then I'm going to be like, this guy's a piece of shit and he needs to rot under the jail.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of my point being is at the end of the day, what my biggest beef is with force. So to get me along on anything, you just have to remove the force. I don't have a problem with communally funded healthcare. Amish do this. I think me and you talked about that as well. I knew a guy that was talking about how every time they need any kind of medical care, they literally just pull the money from the community and then just get that guy surgery, whatever it is. And they go and they pay cash wherever they go. So they get a deal.
Sounds like communism.
Oh, You see what I'm saying? I have no problem with it when it's voluntary. I have no problem with communally funded anything. I just don't have. I have a problem with saying, hey, if you don't pay this, we're going to throw you in a cage. We're going to stick a gun in your face. We're going to garnish your wages. We're going to X, Y, and Z. I have an issue with that.
Right.
Because if you have a system that goes corrupt, that's the biggest reason why. It's not because I have an issue with the idea in and of itself. you have a system that goes corrupt, there's no way to rein it in. The way that we rein in bad systems is we stop funding them, and we fund the new good system. And so, if the only way to, that's kind of my biggest hesitation towards an idea of a single payer system, because if you have a single monopolized power controlling healthcare, then there's no real threat to their power. There's no threat to their money. If someone decides to come after, if they decide that they're just going to start euthanizing people like they're doing in Canada, you know what I mean?
I have a thing on that too. Also,
then there's nothing we can really do. You see what I'm saying? So there's no other option. You know, it's flee the country so you can get health care.
Right.
Like, and that's insane. So, like I said, I don't think our system is anywhere close to perfect. So I think comparing to our system, which is probably one of the worst ways of doing it, honestly, single payer would be better than what we have. I'll give you that as well.
I think like 98% of Americans agree with that.
But that doesn't mean that it's the right decision. So that would be my opening statement.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that we'll find a lot more agreement than you probably expected on this podcast.
Okay.
But we'll also find more disagreement than we'll probably expect as well. So that'll be fun.
Okay. I'm
ready for the claws.
I'm radical, okay?
Me too.
I'm hard on this
and
position.
so is she.
Yeah, good.
There's a difference between
like
radical and revolutionary.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'm not a revolutionary, okay? I love the status quo, okay? First of all. Okay? I suck all these institutions' dicks, except for our healthcare system, because we don't actually have an institution. Thanks. Cool. Thanks, government. Yeah. Yeah, I admit it. Yeah, hell yeah. I love our institutions. They're mildly working.
I don't know if I'd argue that, but go ahead.
No, they're definitely mildly working if you get into the statistics, and they could be better, and I have ways for why they should be better, which is also why I'm progressive, okay? If I were conservative, it'd be like, everything's fine, nothing needs change. But yeah, so I do think, America has a lot of room for improvement. But I'm big into our institutions anyway. So so host, tell me, I feel like I'm the one like kind of driving where this is going. So should I just talk about something in Korea?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember. Well, not necessarily. I'm not like trying to let you drive, but I know that you had prepared some ahead of time, so I wanted to let you rock with what you had rolled.
Yeah, just because like I have the experiences, and maybe you guys can like listen to that. And
well, yeah. It's also more of a. It's also more of a. I'm interviewing you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah. Ask me whatever question related to it.
Yeah, so it's kind of I'm going to give you pushback, but I want to hear what you have to say as well. So, what would you say? I think you said something about getting into. Let's start with the fact that it's not. You said it's single payer, but it doesn't sound like it's. Is it fair to technically call it single payer if the person, the actual individual patient, is paying as well?
Sure. So like single payer just means like what's your like insurance buy-in? Like what options do you have? So like I don't think like I don't think we can call our system single payer, but it's kind of single payer just in like the opposite direction. When you get to Korea, right, as a foreigner, you get this thing called an ARC, which is like an ID card. And after you get your ARC, you apply to the like big government healthcare agency, whatever that's called. I didn't do it. I'm not Korean. My boss did it. So I get my papers back, and they're like, okay, you're under government insurance. And from this moment on, all of my paychecks, I had to, or basically my insurance premium came out of those. So $75 a month, I was paying into my insurance premiums that were just coming out of my check directly. And to a degree, some of the taxes that I was paying were probably also going into it. I think, both fund it. But it's like, you do have a premium.
Withholding.
Yeah. So you do have a premium, and you do have a copay. there is no deductible, and it covers basically everything except for dental and I think like some eye care. Some eye care is like I know is covered by the government, but some is not.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the real like benefits of the system is that it like covers everything basically, and the costs are so unbelievably low that I think that the fact that it's not free like Canada is fine because it's not any order of magnitude higher. So for instance, I was going to the gym a lot about my third year in, and my shoulder was kind of hurting, so I went to the doctor. And the doctor was like, okay, we're going to give you some x-rays. So they took 4 x-rays, and it was $11
Not bad.
for 4 x-rays. Yeah, it's like, I would say like, $270 or $280 an x-ray is like really, really good price. So, yeah. What do you guys think about that?
How much is it for an X-ray?
Well, I assume it's like somewhere between 270 or like 280. Like, I don't know how much. I don't know how much that actually, because I'm not good at math. But 11 divided by 4, right?
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, because like here, I think even one X-ray is like $50.
Yeah, I was, and that's if you have insurance.
Yeah, also true.
Yeah,
but I know in Singapore they have a lot of the same. They've done a lot of the done more of a free market situation now. Economically, economically, Singapore is basically Ancapistan, but socially socially they're way more Nazi Germany. So it's kind of weird.
Okay,
if that makes sense. They're almost like the polar opposite of Sweden and Norway, where economically Sweden and Norway are very, very free market in that way, but they're culturally very like progressive left type people. But like if you look at their economics is wildly, wildly free market.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're and in both of those situations, you actually have a healthcare system that's working remarkably well. Mm-hmm. And if you look at Singapore, they're like paying like $15 for a primary care doctor visit. No insurance, nothing. You just show up, $15, he sees you.
And that's actually, that's another thing that I wanted to mention. Healthcare costs are low because everybody is bought into the program, but even without insurance, it's still really low. Like, seeing the doctor before I had insurance, I had to because I had like the flu. It wasn't that much. I don't remember exactly how much, but it might have been like $40. Like, it was fine. Like, even without insurance, it was cool. And well, that's because everybody's like bought into the system already,
Right. It's
and
like, when it comes to addressing cost, I think a better way of addressing cost is addressing medical patents. I don't believe that ideas can be owned.
I remember you had something to say about that on an earlier podcast. It's something I vehemently disagree with. I think that's something we can get into later after.
Well, we'll save that one for the end if you want, because like I said, I don't.
I feel like I could talk about that for a while, and it's a very different subject from healthcare.
But it definitely relates.
I know it's related. It is related.
Because if you actually look at, you look at the fact that the insulin companies that everybody keeps pointing to, it's like, why aren't we talking about the fact that insulin is 50 years old and these guys still have patents? Why aren't we talking about that? You know what I mean? If the first guy to make a chair was the only guy in his family, and his family from then on were the only guys that were allowed to make chairs, how freaking expensive would chairs be?
Know why we're not talking about better food rather than insulin.
That is another good point. Our food sucks ass. And again, this is where we go back to where I would push back on your institution thing. It's like our food and drugs have been regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, and our food is poison and our drugs are poison.
creating a healthy culture. Even, I mean, you can do this
because they're all bought and paid for by all these giant lobbyists, by these big giant mega corporations who are able to use those regulatory agencies to capture the people that they want. And that's kind of what I was getting at before when I was saying that a lot of this, it's the same thing with this, these vaccines and all of this. It's, every one of these news organizations were pushing to get this vax with almost zero evidence to say that it did half the things they were saying that it did. They had almost no evidence, and it turns out a lot of this stuff comes out and it's not true.
Please stop talking about vaccines. That's the next podcast.
I'm just making the point. I'm making the point. The point is I'm not talking about the actual vaccines, though. I'm not. It's an example. I'm not actually talking about vaccines.
Back and I'm like, I want to do that, but I can't have the conversation.
But I'm saying the reason they're doing that is you also see on these same news organizations, on the same commercial breaks, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. It's the same reason why you will see them justify every war, and then you'll see Raytheon, then you'll see Lockheed Martin, then you'll see all this. It's like they're not paying them outrightly and saying, hey, say this. But you do know that if you lose your advertiser $150 billion contract, you won't be making that ad next year. You won't be getting that ad next year.
So here is...
And don't tell me advertisers don't control content, because we can see that. Don't tell me they don't use advertisers to control content.
Personally, I think consumers control content a lot more than advertisers do, because advertisers appeal to consumers. But that's another point altogether. But what I know this might surprise you, because I don't really look at, but for the past year, I have been going to the gym a lot, and because of that, I've learned a lot about nutrition, and I learned a little bit of consequentially, I learned a little bit about the history of why certain foods are labeled in certain ways, and why there is a breadth of, very, very high caloric intake in America. And that is because, and this is kind of like ebbed and flowed between the two, but between fat and sugar, we kind of have no government limits on like how much you can put in in those things. Right. I don't think, because just like read a Twinkie nutritional information or like just anything with butter. But I wouldn't really like put the blame on the FDA for like why Americans are so unhealthy. It's just that we keep consuming food that is layered in fat, and as a consequence layered in calories.
That's not kind of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what the FDA is presenting at. No, I'm saying what the FDA is presented as this organization that's making sure all the food that's left on the shelf is all the healthy stuff. All the drugs that are left on the market is all the stuff that's fine. That is what it's presented as. It's saying, hey, everything that we've allowed to be on these shelves is safe. Now, you're saying you're taking the guesswork out of the people to where they don't have to learn this stuff. That is what you are selling from that regulatory agency. We're the experts. We've checked this out. It's cool. So you can't really blame the people for then going, okay, the experts say it's cool. And this is the problem that I'm going with right now. If you want to get at that, let's get at that. Let's go back to the original SAD diet. Why was it the original standard American diet? Why was it recommended as what you should eat? The food pyramid. Why was that recommended? Because big grain had lobbyists in the industry that pushed for carbs to be pushed as a big thing. And this is part of the reason why we're all fat. Because the FDA, the experts, were paid the experts were literally paid to teach children. I remember from a very young age being told that I need to eat mostly grain, then above that I need to eat fruits and vegetables, and then after that I need to eat my sweets. That's what I was told. And if you eat that diet, you will get fat.
So one of the things that I'm
Unless you have a
push
retarded
back on-
metabolism.
okay, well, true, but okay. So I do agree that like carbs are definitely like an issue in terms of caloric intake because you can eat a lot of them. But I would say that in the American diet, fat is much more of an issue. Like I'll go to like my friends' houses and they'll like slather butter on like everything they eat, which is, delicious. But if you actually know how much calories is in that amount of butter, you're kind of like, oh, that is really, really a lot.
And Big Dairy also markets milk hardcore, even though there's no correlation to the milk you drink to strong bones. You see those ads, no problem, coming right out of the FDA.
Yeah, well,
there's no correlation. You can look into that. The milk, the calcium that's in milk can't be processed without magnesium, which guess where that gets it if you don't have it in your diet? Your bones. So actually drinking excess milk can actually cause weaker bones.
Yeah, so I actually didn't know that. That's very interesting. One thing...
But that's not what matters. We got to make money for the milk.
Yeah, so I don't think that the FDA is in the interest of... In terms of food, I don't think they're really in the interest of providing necessarily like healthy food for you because like this is America and we love freedom and we like doing whatever we want. I think the FDA is more in the business of being like your food can't be like actively poisonous. So you can poison yourself to a certain degree. It's like I can buy alcohol, right? But it's like if there is like literal poison in the alcohol that you're going to drink and you're going to get like actually sick from it, like I don't know, like salmonella. I don't think salmonella could be an alcohol, but you know what I mean. I think they have a much more vested interest in that rather than like what's good for you. Because I would be a lot more libertarian, I think, if the FDA was being like, well, how much fucking protein is in that chicken, huh? You can't sell that.
I think like the fats, you also have to remember there are good fats and there are bad fats.
Yeah, obviously. Well, okay.
We're going to be like trans fat.
So wait, hang on. I gotta interrupt you.
Hey,
because
that's transphobic. True. Don't attack trans fat. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that is true. Actually, trans fat is a cancer on our society.
I'm a piece of shit. I'm sorry, I had to do it.
I know. So it's true that there are good fats, right? There's like monosaturated versus like the saturated fats. But
they call them
even like an avocado, which is like super healthy and like it's a really good fat, is 400 calories. It's like if I eat 10 avocados in a day, I'm gonna gain a lot of weight. Like that fats just inherently do have a lot of calories in them, and Americans eat a lot of fats, as opposed to like say Korea or Japan, where it's like they eat a lot of like carbs and proteins and like fish and rice, and they're a very thin people over there. Because they're not slathering all their food in butter like we do.
But they also don't sit on ass a lot either.
They do.
And the ones that do get giant.
That's not true. Because I know a lot of Korean friends, and I have a lot of Korean friends who all they do is play computer games, and they're super super thin, and all they eat is like rice and shit, and like ramen. But also,
some people are like me who can drink 9 cans of Mountain Dew a day and not gain an ounce.
Well, yeah, because that has a lot more to do with your caloric intake than your sugar intake, right? But
no, I mean, I'm insane. Like, I've done counting before, and I've taken in like 20,000 calories, like insane amounts of calories.
Yeah, but it's about like a regular amount, right? I guarantee you, if you're eating 20,000 calories a day, you're going to gain weight really fast.
I also have like hardcore ADHD, and I pace, and I'm always moving. It's hard for me to sit still.
Yeah. That's true also. And exercise is important, but
it's important.
Like you're going to lose a lot more calories just like walking around a day. So like I lost a ton of calories as a kindergarten teacher just because I was moving back and forth between like the chairs back and forth, going up and down the stairs, picking up kids and like moving them around and being like, okay, go over here. That physical activity made me lose way more weight in terms of calories than both going on a diet or going to the gym can. I am actually not losing it. Yeah. So yeah.
Here's the thing, though. So that is exercise.
Cardio works better.
What we've done in America is we have created gyms and made exercise a service rather than a culture. Like, walking, like making it a normal everyday activity just to walk. That would be good for you.
The part of
right?
Jared from Subway's story nobody talks about. Jared from Subway, everybody talks about how he ate the sandwich every day or whatever. Nobody talks about the fact he walked like 6 miles there and back total. You know what I mean? To get that sandwich.
So people, when they're thinking about calories, people always focus deeply on that idea of like, this has to be exercise. And what I mean by physical activity is not like a concerted effort to lose weight or to do something, right? And by the way, okay, fuck you. My gym is amazing. I am never going to get as much weight on a plate as I have at a gym. You think I'm going to have a home gym? Are you kidding me? You know how much space that is? Holy shit. I love the gym. I love the gym. Okay.
Why would you just go walk at the park?
Because it's so much space, and the amount of weight I have to lift is so heavy, and I'm not moving those up my stairs, man.
I mean, you could just walk. You could just walk to the park, make walking an everyday activity. I mean, it's good for you.
I'm trying to lift weights, though. I'm trying to gain muscles. Okay, you can.
He's trying to be cool.
Okay,
He's trying to be cool. You're a lesbian. You wouldn't understand.
True. It's, okay, high five hating women. Okay,
This is why I love this podcast, because I like to have people on that we can have a good ass time.
Yeah, it's true. We can all have a good time bullying Tawnya until she cries.
I know.
She won't cry. She'll start bullying back.
Cry, obviously. Bully me back. Okay?
She will bully you harder.
Tawnya.
She will bully you way harder.
That's good. Okay, I like that. Good. Only men on this podcast, like Tawnya.
That's right.
Big, strong Tawnya men.
Well,
okay.
I mean, you did see my picture, right, with this big cigar, like that. That's kind of manly, right?
Yeah, it's true. Having phallic objects in your mouth is very manly.
She said something about that. She said, how is she supposed to be on dad influence? And she's like, a chick. And I was like, well, you got kids and you like women. Close enough.
Yeah. True. Also, yeah. Okay. There's nothing gayer than liking dudes, okay? So you're very straight, Tawnya.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. What was I talking about? Okay, yeah.
Lord.
When people are thinking about losing weight, concerted efforts are fine. I definitely lose like a lot of calories when I go to the gym and I lift a lot of weight. Focusing on cardio is not something that usually a lot of PhD exercise scientists recommend, because one, people hate it, so they're not going to do it forever. But having a job where you just move a lot in any way is going to be the best thing for your calories, because you're going to lose so much in a day. Like 15,000 steps is the recommended for like most people, and most people don't do nearly that amount. Anyway, there's my nutrition tirade, by the way.
I'll have to send you the 116,000 step day I have a screenshot of.
Holy shit. Oh my god.
When I say I pace, I'm not joking.
Good lord. Okay, that's why this dude's so skinny, okay? He's like, I also walk 100,000 steps a day.
I think the thing was like, it was like 25 or 30 miles. I was like, in a day? What?
Okay, I don't want to. I don't want to hear any arguments about why Americans are overweight from the guy who walks around 100,000 steps a day.
Move! I'm telling you how to do it. I remember having this discussion with one of my. It was a job I worked. It was a Nepalese guy. And he was a bigger dude, and we were arguing about that. And I was telling him, I was like, dude, this is what you got to do. You got to start walking. You got to just start walking. You got to move around more. You know, this whole time you're here, you need to stop sitting down, just walk around. You know, it's like, I was like, you're too big to start running, and it'll just be miserable and you won't want to do it. Just walk around the block a few times, keep doing it over and over and over. And eventually you'll want to jog, then you jog. And then eventually you'll want to run, then you run. And I said, and that's how you need to lose the weight. And the thing is he was like, I don't want to hear any advice from you. You're skinny. And I'm like, well, where do you want to get your advice on how to be skinny, dude? From a fat guy?
Okay, so first of all, and you should take advice from me, because I actually know what I'm talking about. So 20,000 steps, by the way, is considered high activity. So
and it's good.
20,000 steps
sure.
is a lot. Okay,
25,000.
Doing 100,000 steps. That's crazy.
I will send you the screenshot from my Google Health. I'm not kidding.
Listen, I believe it. That's absurd, but it's possible.
Yeah. I used to mow lawns for a living too, so it's walking back and forth in the yard, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
And the thing that I will always recommend, the thing that I constantly hear, all these people on YouTube I recommend, is if you're going to do cardio, just find something you like. Walking around the block,
swim, jog.
Well, yeah.
Never.
So the reason why I wouldn't just on its face be like, oh, walk around the block a few times, is because most people hate that and find it really boring. But it's if you're like, oh, hey, I'm gonna go swimming with my friends, or it's having some kind of community activity, or just somebody you talk about oh, hey, dude, I was fucking playing basketball at the courtyard the other day. It's something you enjoy doing. Literally anything, even if it's inside.
Call your friend up,
as long as you're moving.
Say, hey, I want to talk to you about politics, about X, Y, and Z, and chat while you walk, so you don't think about what you're doing.
Yeah,
put on Dad Influence. Put on Dad Influence and listen to it episode after episode. No.
Yeah.
But I mean, but for real though, put on a podcast, put on some music.
Don't back down, plug.
The fact that people think that walking something as simple as we were hunter-gatherers, we ran, human species, survival, whatever. But the fact that we think that walking is boring is culturally what would I call that? De-evolution.
I don't know. I think I might have ADHD or something, because I find walking boring as sin, and I gotta be doing 5 things at one time. Maybe that's just me, and I have a weird mental brain. I've never gotten a diagnosis, but I'm pretty sure I do.
Well,
I get bored.
If that's the case, then what you do, we talk back to I know we're hella off topic again.
Yeah,
but going back to
if they're fun.
But going back to the hunter-gatherer thing, I'll have to send that to you. I think you'll find it interesting. ADHD guys in hunter-gatherer societies, you had to. It was a tribe. I can't remember which one it was, but it was this tribe, and some of them were leaving to go to the city, and some of them were staying in the tribe, and they were testing, that this ADHD gene that they had that caused what they called inattention, right?
Yeah. Which,
if you look into, it's pretty interesting. They've kind of redefined the inattention part, but they were looking into these guys, and they noticed that when they went to more quote unquote civilized societies, they actually did poorly, whereas in hunter-gatherer societies they did well. And they started looking into the socioeconomic factors of how these people were behaving in the different societies. And it's when you move to the more civilized societies, people specialize more. And so them learning a task and doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over in a factory or office or whatever, it was really hard for them to do. But in the hunter-gatherer society, they were the guy that saw the last gazelle go over the ridge. They were the guy that saw the last berry in the bush. They were the guy that, you know what I'm saying? Because they were paying attention to everything.
Daniel, do you want to start a commune in the woods? That's wild, man.
But that was kind of that was the thing is what they've kind of redefined from ADHD to from inattention to what they call hyperfocus. And they've said it isn't necessarily that these people have a problem having attention to something, maintaining attention. It's that they cannot lose attention on the thing that they're whatever it is. So when their attention gets drawn to something, they cannot remove their attention back from it.
Yeah,
so they
okay.
hyper focus, and that is caused by, like I said, if you had the last gazelle go over the thing, you might have been having a conversation with your hunter-gatherer friend, right?
Mhm.
And then that gazelle goes over the corner, and now you're looking at the gazelle. Now you're trying to figure that out.
Okay.
Whatever he's
That's
saying is irrelevant. There's a gazelle. You see what I'm saying?
That's so fascinating, because that is totally true. For,
these are the guys that led the tribe.
Yeah. And again, I'm not diagnosed, so I can't just be like, I have ADHD. But that relates to my experience in that, like, some books, even if I find them like kind of interesting, I can't pay attention to them at all. But like The Witcher, I read through that whole book in like one day.
Because we will hyper focus. You'll find and that's kind of like you'll find something, and then you'll want to dig into it and just know every little thing there is to know about it from back to front. Oh, you'll spend 3 hours researching the lore behind Skyrim. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you can't study a textbook for shit. That's because, like I said, it's just the way that your brain, hits a hyper focus, and you can ride that baby all the way to knowing everything about something.
Mm-hmm. So healthcare. Tawnya, ask me a question.
Back to healthcare.
Oh my goodness. Speaking like ADHD, actually, it is genetically it is a mutation of a gene that happens, and it does get passed down. But I think it's important also to remember that our environments affect how that happens.
Sure.
Epigenetics.
Well. Just so question about healthcare, like single payer. That's so there's a difference between free and paid for. So how is Canada specifically?
So like, everything. Yeah. So I actually have quite a many Canadian friends. I know many expats from many countries because of going to Korea. A lot of people come from different places, and a lot of them have talked about their healthcare systems. So with Canada, you get these two sides where it's like a bunch of Canadians are like, oh my god, our healthcare is like super great. And then you get like those like conservative Canadians who are like, I waited for 8 months to get a single doctor's visit, and they're going to tell me to kill myself. So I think it's, and meeting these people in like real life, I have actually learned how it actually is, and it's very like regional and dependent on what issue you have. If there's only like one doctor in Newfoundland that does shoulder stuff, everybody in Newfoundland is going to that same doctor. So there's a huge waiting list, That's why you gotta wait for a bunch, and it's free, so anyone with any shoulder problem who's like recommended to go to the specialist is gonna go. So I think it's more when they talk about waiting times, it's more of a problem of like lack of doctors. I don't have data on that, but I feel like it has to be, because I don't know why Korea, as cheap as it is, in a society where like pretty much every child is taught to become a doctor, versus like Canada, where they're like, oh, we have like these super long wait times. I don't know. Maybe they just need to raise the doctor pay in Canada or something.
Maybe the education too.
Maybe. I actually don't know much about Canadian education.
Yeah, so one of my biggest concerns, again, is like going to be like where Danny's at with this. That does not say that I like private. For me, private is absolutely garbage. However, my biggest concern is government control over that.
Yeah, and I can talk about that too. So the government is kind of just the system that is used to pay through these things. It's like purely the insurance aspect. So like doctors, pharmaceutical companies, like anything else related to medicine, that's all like purely capitalist and like not controlled by the government at all whatsoever. It's just the matter of payment that gets through. They just help you with the payment part. It's not so much like a government control thing, because with the way it's set up, it's all dependent on how much people are paid into it. I mean, with COVID, when like fewer people are like kind of paying into it, it's like there's a little bit of deficit spending too. but ideally not much.
Now, like, why does it have to be a government in your perspective? Like, why do you feel like a government needs to be this middle?
Sure.
Let me make
That's a great question. Yeah.
real quick stipulation here. I'm not trying to hate on your question here.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair here, we're not necessarily meaning governing body. We're meaning, why do you need to use an instrument of force for this? Fair? Is that what I'm saying? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm specifically asking him his perspective on why they need a government intermediary to make the payment.
Well, then that will be the following question from me. Go ahead. Answer her question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. So, with healthcare specifically, and with a lot of like social goods, well, actually, no, specifically with healthcare, it kind of only works if like the more people are like bought into a system, right? So if 5 people are bought into the system, and one person has a healthcare cost of like $100,000, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't work. It's not split across, and it's not split across like so many people that can cover that like super easily. But if everybody's bought into the system, it kind of one, it already lowers the cost, because we kind of see that in other countries where like even in multi-payer systems, the cost of healthcare even without insurance is much lower because everybody is bought into a system.
Well,
right?
That's kind of what I've said before, is it's not really fair to compare, in my opinion, anything to America's system. America has one of the most expensive systems in the world, and it's because it's this weird clusterfuck Frankenstein of, socialism and capitalism and cronyism and everything kind of just intermixed together. It's really the worst of all worlds. It really is the worst of all worlds. So to sit here and, to me, in my opinion, to say, oh, well, it's cheaper than us, it's like, it's almost like you have to take America off the table, because America's just a failure. Like, everything sucks compared to us. The reason why it's
cheaper than us is because so many people just don't have insurance at all, right?
That's what I'm trying to tell you is Singapore has lower prices than basically anywhere when it comes to annual medical spending that a person pays. Like, it's basically anywhere, and that's part of the reason why is because of the hyper free market.
Is everybody, does like basically everybody have insurance in Singapore?
They don't use insurance at all. See, that's another thing that I've kind of pointed out to people too, is what a lot of people don't realize is insurance is an inflationary environment too. Well, what the way that money works in and of itself, right? This is my area of expertise. Like, I studied economics hard. That's what I went to college for. That's, you know what I mean? I've studied 6 or 7 different schools of economics. I really do. This is something I really do know what I'm talking about. And the way that money works in and of itself is it's a supply and demand. It happens in money as well, the supply and demand curve, right? So the greater supply of money, then the greater, the more money something costs. This is why the idea of printing money causes inflation. Yeah, and other things cause inflation too. Insurance is one of those things. Credit is also another thing. Anything that's bought with credit, if you notice, is expensive. Anything that's paid for through insurance is also hyper expensive. Look how much it costs to bury a person. To dig a hole and put a person in a hole, look how much it costs. Because it's all funded through insurance. Because if someone knows that you have a greater supply of money to spend on something, then they know they can charge more for that. Do you understand where I'm coming?
Yeah. So
I can charge you $200,000 for a house because I know you don't have to pay it to me all at once. Now, if you had to pay me all that money at once, now I can't charge these crazy numbers. I have to charge you something that's actually feasible for someone to pay at one time.
Yeah, and so
do you get where I'm coming from here?
Yeah.
This is the same reason why house prices go through the roof. All of this. Anything that's bought on a loan, through insurance, through credit, all of that stuff, it inflates the cost of anything, period. And that's something that people have to realize as well. And that's part of the reason why, like I said, in Singapore, you don't have these high prices on these things because they don't have all these things artificially inflating the market.
Sure. So I'm not too sure about like Singapore specifically, but I would say if that's like the only country that is like that, or one of like the like very very few countries that is like that, and
a lot of it has to do with culture. Like, you can create good institutions, good systems, good markets, everything with something as simple as culture. And I think sometimes that is why the right wing gets more on culture wars, whereas the left wing tends to go more towards economics. But I do think there is a happy medium between the two. Again, because culture, it really does make a huge difference. And if that's something that happens in Singapore, I'm gonna assume it has a lot to do with the way that their culture is too.
Oh, their culture's hyper-fascist. They're really authoritarian. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying Singapore is great. Let's all move to Singapore. Like, they beat the hell out of people for small crimes. Like, they still have canings and things like that. It's more of a fever dream. When it comes to the cultural aspect, it's more of a fever dream of good old Alex.
I'm actually so curious. I'm actually so curious about that kind of stuff because I actually have a friend who's from Singapore, so I should ask him some of this. I think that like if Singapore is that way, you know, like you guys said, it's like it's probably a matter of a very specific set of circumstances that aren't easily replicated in other countries. But in terms of like, okay, well, how is healthcare successful? Well, you see all these other countries that have government insurance and their costs are a lot lower and people are covered, and maybe it's not, you know, as good as America's, as like many right-wing people say, but having the access to healthcare that is not any magnitude better or worse, but is affordable, is probably like a better thing than just like not having it at all and not going to the hospital ever. Which is another thing I want to bring up.
Danny, no offense, but I don't want to live in a fascist system.
Oh, I don't either. But no, I don't want to live in anything fascist either. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm kind of arguing. I'm saying that basically, like, you know, this is kind of the point, is no system looks exactly like... Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
The point I'm making...
I can hear you, but I can't see your face. Haha.
The point I'm making is there's no system that's perfect. I don't believe there's any system that's perfect. But we can look at, like, the components, and in my opinion, like, the separation of church and state has been pretty proven well in America to work well.
All right. So before you went frozen, I was going to push back at you a little bit because I do understand that you were talking about taking components of, like, good components of all of these, you know, different ideas and cultures and all of that, and, like, trying to find, you know, better options. I think that's kind of what we already do here. Like, what do you mean? We are a melting pot of ideas, and we are a melting pot of culture.
Right. Well, basically, what I'm kind of getting at when I go with that is the problem is a lot of people have an issue with the idea of a patchwork of laws, which to me I think is the most idiotic argument of all time.
Love you.
Like, the world is a patchwork of laws, and it always will be. You know what I mean? Like,
So what do you mean by that? Can you explain?
I mean that if you go to Korea right now, there's a whole nother set of laws than what is here in America.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then if you go to China, there's a whole nother set of rules. If you go to Somalia, there's a whole nother set of rules. If you go to Canada, there's a whole nother set of rules.
Right.
So there's already a patchwork of laws. You see what I'm saying? But the thing about it is the people who live under the laws should be the ones who are setting them. And this idea of legislating for an entire country of 330 million people of how everyone's going to live is, in my opinion, insane. And I think that's insane.
Especially when not even half of those people get to vote.
Yeah, true. So I have a question. So, do you think that there are not things that apply to all of Americans?
What do you mean?
Okay, so like, we have these like everybody has like their little bubbles, right?
With Elon
Go, Trump is a Marxist.
And he was talking about a multipolar world. You know who else talks about multipolar worlds?
Marxist.
Russia and China.
I don't think that makes somebody a Marxist, though. I think that just means they probably have. That any of these people are advocating for an abolition of the state and a creation of like a full communist society without any money and
Correct.
yeah, like I don't think these people are Marxists in any
so
sense that I would call actual Marxism.
Marxism too that says, oh, we can use the state to wield the power for the people.
Well, in fairness, in the Communist Manifesto, it says that that's like step 2 or 3 of the that's supposed to be like the way you get to the stateless society.
The dictatorship of the proletariat is supposed to be a rise up of the people, not a party of the people.
Well, it's like step 1 is like get everyone together and like abolish the bourgeoisie or whatever, and then the second step is creating a government that can like give people all the resources that they need, and then like I mean there are like 5 steps. I'm simplifying it, but like the last step is like then we like there's a dissolution of the state. And then everybody has all the resources they need, and it's a stateless money society.
So you have the Communist Manifesto Marxist, and then you have the Das Kapital Marxist.
Okay, I don't believe that anyone has ever read Capital. Okay, I don't believe it. I don't think anyone in the history of existence has actually read that whole book. I think everyone just pretends they read it. I don't believe you. Okay, have you kidding me? Who can read that shit? Who?
There are all kinds of people who have read that book.
Oh my god, I'm just trying to read it.
Literally, there are, like, it's mainly the economists, the Marxist economists, they're the ones who do that. And it's like, Marx wasn't advocating for an economy, he was fucking criticizing one, you idiot.
So I think what happens is that people read the Communist Manifesto and then Wikipedia Das Kapital, and I don't think anybody's ever actually read it.
He said Wikipedia Das Kapital.
That's not true.
Oh.
Okay.
Hey man, that's all you need to know. It's not that complicated.
I'll give you at least 5 people have read it in its entirety. Okay?
Hey man, it's not that complicated. Free stuff for everybody, right?
They literally have channels with groups
being dumb.
on it.
And they never finish
go
it.
through the entire thing.
No! That's a myth. That's another communist myth.
What?
This is another communist myth. Oh, no, we're talking shit.
Alright, so let's get back to healthcare. Now, last time we had a stream, this is kind of a part 2. But I'll probably paste them together. We had a lot of technical issues. You probably saw some earlier. I actually was able to play with the settings. I think I have fixed them. Hopefully. And I have removed the giant pile of clothes that was on top of the router, causing it to be extremely hot. So that probably helped as well. So let's see how we go.
Are we live? Are we just doing this?
We are recording. That's why I was like, shit, we can start with Trump as a Marxist. I love it.
I'm glad I went on my big capital right on camera.
Do you want to know how I evaluate Trump being a Marxist?
Okay, no, hang on. We'll talk about that later, okay?
We can end on that.
We have a million podcasts.
We can end on that. Now it's a teaser. Now people will have a reason to listen through. Or maybe we'll just say it randomly through the middle. Maybe we'll let you go on your tirade through the middle. The only way that you will know is if you listen to every word we say.
Daniel, plug an ad read. Daniel, plug an ad. More ads.
Alright, we're back, and I think I might have finally fixed it. I know I've said this before, but I have done more tinkering. Dude, the sheer amount of fucking editing that I'm gonna have to do to this podcast is gonna be insane.
Just edit all the parts where I sound really smart and good.
Yeah, exactly. That's the plan. That's the plan. I'm gonna make you look like an idiot. Like I'm gonna also add some like AI. I'm gonna like run you through the AI so I can make you say a bunch of dumb stuff.
Is that what you and Al making me look like an idiot with AI running me through the you asshole.
I really
you bloody asshole.
Can you please do a thing where like you put my AI and I say how much like I love communism, and then like Tawnya, this AI will talk about how like she's really changed her mind on being like a strong conservative Republican, and probably just like being gay is wrong.
I'm a what? I mean, that would really be interesting.
What's funny about making that video is if you made that video, like a shitload of people would actually believe you.
Oh, for sure.
And that's what's the funny part is there's like so many people who are like, oh, she's a lesbian, but she doesn't want to suck dick of a trans person. She's a Republican.
I'm a Republican.
I don't think that anyone in the real world would say that. I think that's I think that's another Twitter thing. I feel like if I talk to like Democrats, like 99% of them would be like, yeah, it doesn't.
Oh, honey, you don't know the various ways that guys try to get girls to suck their dick.
Oh,
this is why she got kicked out of CPD. I'm not even kidding.
I listened to the podcast, but I don't know if that's really like all they kicked you out for. It's kind of ridiculous, I think.
It's dumb.
She can send you screenshots. She has a whole shebang.
I said that we should hear that genital mutilation is a human rights violation, and that we should just normalize chicks with dick.
So, also, I think we should get back to the topic.
What's the topic?
The topic is healthcare and Jonathan's terrible idea. I mean, Jonathan's ideas on healthcare.
Yeah. So I do remember where I was at from the last thing. Here's your pre-editing bit. Okay, where I was talking about.
Is there anything for the United States?
No, I was talking about bubbles, because we were talking about like communities and how like communities should help each other, and I was saying that we all have our bubbles where it starts with us, and then it goes to our families, and then our friends, and then our communities, and then our states, and then country and world, etc. And kind of how I think about that is when it comes to ultimately, what do I care about? It's like I care about helping people. What is in my power to do? It's like helping as many people in the United States is something that I care about, because that's all I have control over ultimately. Like I can't make I don't know, like Bolivia. Like I can't make them have better policies in certain ways. But that's why I think that I guess that a federalized healthcare system is important to me.
I can respect that.
Oh, I remember one of my questions that I wanted to ask was also why do you want to use forcible taxation? Why do you not believe that you can raise the money through voluntary taxation, given the fact that polls actually show that many people would voluntarily contribute to such an idea?
Okay. So when we talk about the reason that I think a single payer system is better than a multi-payer system is that everybody's bought into the same thing, right? So while a multi-payer system can be good because everybody's still bought into healthcare in general, and that lowers the cost for everybody, everybody being bought into the same system lowers the healthcare costs in general for everyone, even more. So I think there kind of has to be, like, from my perspective, for the ideal that I'm trying to achieve, and I'm trying to achieve, well, how can I get the most people in the hospital when they want to go? And I mean, that seems to be like taxation, right? And we can have a little talk on that as well, if you like.
Taxation is theft. No.
And to be honest, I of course I believe that, but that's the reason that, and it's not necessarily even in my opinion something to believe. It just really is, and the question, which is something I actually said in my podcast with Kylie, the question isn't whether or not it's theft, the question of whether or not it's necessary, and it's like that's what you're arguing, but it is theft. You're forcibly taking someone else's money. With or without their permission. That is theft.
For war.
Say again?
So
I would be more okay with it if it wasn't used for war.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like if someone stole your money and then bought something you would have bought with it, then you'd have less of a problem with them stealing your money.
Yeah.
If a robber mugged me and then bought me the hot dog I was about to buy with that $5 bill, then I wouldn't care that he just stole my $5 bill.
Okay, so we can talk about this a little bit, and that's fine if you want to get into.
I would rather healthcare.
I will say that one of my, I guess, frustrations that I hope you might be able to empathize with is when I argue in our political groups and they're flush with libertarians. Every argument seems to come back to taxation and theft, where I'm like, okay, well, I really strongly believe in education. They're like, oh yeah, well, taxation is theft, so I don't believe in that at all. And I feel like I'm always like having to argue the same point over and over and over again because it comes from a fundamental area for you. And I get that, right? I do understand that. But we are living in a world with taxation where taxation is not going away anytime soon. I don't know if any country in the world has completely voluntary taxation. It's, things seem to be done roughly the same way everywhere in the world. So if I'm just going to be realistic about something, if I'm talking about government policy, it's more on whether or not we should do something versus the concept being wrong.
I hear what you're saying. But what you're kind of arguing for is for me to show up into me to enter your Overton window. You know what I'm saying? Is you're kind of creating parameters that I have to be within to be acceptable in an argument. So it's like, in my opinion, it's like the reason this is a big deal to me because it's kind of like I said, it's force. It's what separates slavery from a job is force. You know what I mean? It really is at the end of the day. Like what separates rape from, rough sex is force. Like if you go across the board, it's like what makes things bad is force. You know what I mean? Like,
then.
Go.
So if you are, okay. So if we are going to argue about like this kind of like axiom, I guess I have to ask, like, do you think it was wrong for you to bring your children into the world?
No. Why would it be wrong?
Because they didn't consent to that. Like you forced them to exist, and they exist now, and they can't really do anything about that. And you pretty much have complete control over their lives until they're an adult.
Did I force them to exist?
Yeah, you did. Like, they didn't consent.
Or did they come to exist through natural, reaction?
Well, that doesn't really matter. You're the one who instigated it, right?
Well, that's true, but I didn't force them to exist. You know what I mean? I would argue that you could make the argument that someone was forced to exist if you were talking about, like, in vitro or something of that nature, in my opinion. But if you're talking about just natural people having babies, that's not necessarily forced to exist. That's no different than any other animal in the world.
Well, no, I know, right? but it doesn't matter if it's natural or not. Like, deal with like the actual like fundamental issue. I was never asked whether or not I wanted to be born.
Right, but you also do have the ability to opt out at any point.
Well, that's well, yeah, but
so technically, actually, if you think about it from that perspective, you do consent to life every minute that you continue to exist.
He's talking about the original.
Yeah, like it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter that like I can opt out later. It's like you're the one who forced me to exist in the first place.
And technically, it wasn't humans that forced other humans to reproduce and exist. That's nature.
Well, no, I mean, well, everybody has a choice on whether or not to reproduce.
There is a force from nature, and that's fine. I'm okay with that kind of force. I am not okay with force from man.
Well,
yeah, it's kind of the point that I'm kind of making. That's like there's a difference. That's kind of I think that's where I'm trying to get at. I'm not necessarily invoking the natural fallacy. I'm not saying because it's natural, it's good. I'm saying that when something comes from nature, it's not necessarily fair to call it a man force. You know what I mean?
No,
and this is kind of where libertarianism, in my opinion, should be getting to. That's the argument. Is it's like I want to get to talking about the things that are natural forces that we could actually be working towards and fixing and dealing with, rather than dealing with the forces that man puts on each other.
Well, Daniel, the reason I'm asking you this question is because it's fundamental to your worldview, where like consent is the most important thing and voluntarism is the most important thing. What right do you have to make somebody be born? It's true that they can take their life beforehand, but you may have just caused a bunch of suffering to that person in their life that they didn't want to happen, and they ultimately decide to kill themselves, where it's like, well, it's your fault that they were born, and they didn't ask for that.
But I also don't think of life as an inherently bad thing, either.
Sure, it doesn't have to be bad, but it is, well, like your taxes don't have to be bad, right? Like, you could benefit entirely from all the taxes that you pay into if you see it, and you could, like, really appreciate it, and you could be like, oh, wow, but you would still argue that's theft.
Well, that's
man-made force, though.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Whether a man-made force or not, you're not asking about whether it's like Daniel chose to have sex and make his children. Daniel decided to not have sex or get him the sex and be like, I'm not going to have children.
Nature drives us to reproduce.
Nature doesn't drive me to reproduce. I don't have any fucking kids. Okay? Nature does not force you to do that. Nature doesn't force you to do that. If you have an ethical issue with it, you can say, I don't.
Daniel is total. Yes, because he might have a desire to do that, but your desire does not allow you. Like, I could have a desire to shoot you in the face. That doesn't mean it's right or that you consented to it. Okay? I could have that as a man-made, innate, natural desire for violence.
But the two current living beings at the moment, they made a choice to have sex together.
Yeah, but the baby didn't.
And a baby happened because of nature.
And so by Daniel's argument, I would say that's wrong because they should not have brought that child into the world because that wasn't voluntary.
Why would that be wrong?
Because the child didn't consent to it.
Why would something that doesn't exist need to consent?
Because it did not consent to existing. Why are you allowed to make something else exist or be born?
It didn't exist. It can't consent. That's just ridiculous.
I know it can't consent. That's the point.
And then technically it can't consent until it becomes an adult as well.
Am I allowed to fuck you while you're asleep? You can't consent. You're literally not able to.
No.
Exactly. Okay?
That's the
baby, just because the baby can't consent, you can't know what that baby does or does not want. So it's not right for you to bring it into the world. And also, by the way, I don't believe this.
Until it exists.
So can you have sex with a woman that doesn't exist? Is that right?
It doesn't
like
exist.
A sex doll?
Yeah, but that person at some point will have an opinion on whether or not they will or will not exist.
After they exist.
Yeah, I know. After Daniel forced them to exist.
In which case they have the ability to opt out.
In what way did he not force it to exist?
You're drawing a borderline here.
No. He did not force the woman to have sex. The woman agreed to it. the offspring, the thing that was created, did not agree to be born.
The thing that didn't exist that can't consent? That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, yes, it cannot consent. That's my point, is that it cannot.
Okay, well, we can consent.
But you're not involved in the equation. You are not the part that matters. Again, I'm not allowed to rape you.
Again, we can consent. We can consent to taxes, or we don't have to consent to taxes.
No, but you're
we're
not making the connection. Daniel, are you getting what I'm saying? Please.
I get what you're saying.
We exist. That is the difference. You're talking about something that doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah,
and you're applying
you're forcing it to exist, and it doesn't have a choice whether or not it wants to exist.
I would argue that it's more. I would argue
right now
existing and forcing and having a baby.
But my mom.
I would argue.
My dad forced me to exist. It didn't have to do that.
They did not force.
I would argue that it's less of a.
And I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice though.
Who cares?
I would argue that it's less of a force.
What I'm fucking saying.
Why?
Not always matter. Consent is not the end all be all to
Listen,
situation.
can I make a point? Let me make a point. I make a point
Okay,
here.
Oh my God! Seriously,
The only reason that you have the ability. Let me draw this. Let me draw the middle here so people understand what's going on here.
Tawnya. I exist, right? Well, do you agree that in your mind you probably believe I exist? Okay, yes, please interrupt me, Daniel, and explain. Be the bridge. Be the bridge. I need you to be the bridge.
You're taking something that you're a false.
I would argue that it's less.
Fucking words like that. Just explain why I'm wrong.
A false dichotomy.
Either or when there's no either
taking
or.
Something that doesn't exist.
Interrupt. Daniel, we can't hear you.
It can consent, and if it didn't consent, it didn't consent.
No,
I would argue that it's less. Okay, so
the is created cannot consent, which you agree with me on.
You need to exist.
Daniel, we can't hear you. Your mic or something is muted.
Is my mic muted? Can you not hear me?
Logic doesn't even come anywhere close to existing people and taxes and consenting.
No, Tawnya. I exist.
I know you exist.
No, I'm typing it in chat so you could follow the line.
I know you exist. But you don't get to compare something that doesn't exist and say that it didn't consent because only the existing can consent.
I could not.
What are you typing?
I'm typing a line that you can go back and read because this is you can't, I don't know why you're inserting something here that doesn't make this logically follow, but this absolutely logically follows.
It doesn't make it logically follow because you're talking
absolutely
about
logically follows.
Exists, dude.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Daniel, please.
Listen here. So for you to consent to anything, you have to exist in the first place.
I agree.
So the argument would be more fair that you are allowing them to exist rather than forcing them to exist.
What if I don't want to?
Especially given the fact that there are things such as birth control, such as other things that you would be for preventing them from existing rather than forcing them not to exist, rather than forcing them to exist in the first place.
Do you think you have
so when you're using birth control, no, I'm not. That's not what I'm making. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you are normally taking precautions to make sure a baby doesn't exist until you take. Oh, and that's why I said that the comparison would be fair when you're talking about in vitro and certain situations like that, because then I would argue, yeah, you kind of are forcing it to exist. Now, whereas what you're kind of what we're saying is you're not really doing much. You're just stopping the unnatural changes that you would be making and allowing what nature does to happen. That's kind of what I'm saying. So it's more of an allowing to exist rather than a forcing to exist, especially given the fact that you do have the option to opt out. So like I said, if you want to make that comparison, right, then I am totally cool with your taxes if you allow me to opt out at any time.
Okay.
Dang, man.
Okay.
You got to warn me before you do stuff like that.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay with taxes.
Okay.
As long, like, I'm
No,
okay.
no, because there's like a fundamental misunderstanding of how the argument works. Okay, I need to explain
Well,
this.
when you're taking
So I can opt off. I can opt out at any time.
the material.
So the argument.
If we're
that
gonna
the
apples to
proposal is
apples
I
it.
should not be forced to have to kill myself just because two people forced me to exist.
I mean,
Just because I'm not enjoying it.
You shouldn't have to be forced to kill yourself anyway.
Right, and I shouldn't have to
Look.
I shouldn't have to be forced to file a piece of paperwork to not have to pay my taxes. But if I can file a piece of paperwork to not have to pay my taxes, I will accept that middle ground.
Okay.
And I also think that, like, suicide, getting into, like, that suicide thing, like, a lot of our environment.
I might turn my mic down. It's a little high.
No, dude, I can't continue. I need you guys to both understand this because this logically follows.
Who
right?
put
And I
this
think Daniel's
stream
sort of
on
getting
here? Dang,
Okay.
dude, you're gonna put this stream on, but you're not even showing anything.
What?
Oh, I gotta hit watch stream, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, come on.
Oh no.
What are you doing?
Yeah,
Come
there
on,
you go.
Boomer. Okay.
Okay, watching.
Okay, great. Okay. So the dad
This sucks.
consents to having sex with the mom who consents. The baby does not consent, but all parties are active because this is a future person that is going to exist. I am a future person that exists.
Metaphysical. At this point.
Sure, right? It's a theoretical person, but they do not have a say in whether or not this action happens. Okay? They have
Because
no say in that. They are not consenting.
Because
If
they're
this
not
baby
involved
does-
in that actions. Sex,
Yeah, exactly.
conception happens after sex,
no,
not during
no.
sex.
Well, no, because they are involved because eventually, like, it's going to create them, right? So even if they're not like directly involved, they're indirectly involved, right? This
Technically,
action-
they're doing all the work. It's sperm swimming towards the egg, so they're the ones that are actually doing the action.
Okay, shut up. Okay.
I win!
Wow, I got.
You made it into the A.
I got.
I win!
I just had to agree that sperms have a mind of their own.
I win!
You're saying that something that doesn't exist has a mind of its own, so why not the sperm?
It does eventually. I have a mind of my own. You have a mind of your own. Dan.
Well, the sperm eventually has a mind of its own.
None of us agreed to be born.
Yes, you did. You swam hard as fuck to get there.
No, I agree for myself to be born. Okay.
You swam pretty hard to do it, bro.
That's awesome.
God, my arms are so big.
I don't even care. Like, that's the best.
Okay. Anyway, so this person, right? So B hates
Where's
their
the
life.
sperm?
Okay, shut up. This is the real argument, right? This person is indirectly affected by these person's direct actions, which they consented to, but this person did not consent to. There are three people involved here. Okay.
Person has a definition. That is not a person.
Tawnya, it doesn't matter if they weren't a person in the moment. They're a person in the future. All of us are people who did not consent to being born. We might enjoy our lives, but in the case that we didn't, who caused that to happen? Our parents caused that to happen. Was it right for our parents to bring us into the world knowing that we might have a horrible life?
I feel like you're giving, like, the right wing some sort of ammo here for their pro-life.
So first of all, okay, this is...
But you're taking, like...
This is just a philosophical argument.
You're taking it out of conception, and you're putting it into the metaphysical, and that's really scary.
This is not something that I believe in, okay? I don't think that it's everyone's obligation to kill themselves because they were not given the choice on whether or not to be born. But but Daniel's philosophy is pretty contingent on voluntarism. But this is a key action that happened that you did not consent to. It was forced upon you.
Now your argument's actually starting to make sense to me.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Okay, yeah. It's just it's just a theoretical.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah.
I get it. So
Okay.
you consent to you consent to living every day that you're alive. Blah 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 blah. I get it. Yeah, I get your argument.
Well, no, not necessarily.
Okay. No, because you're like, if that
well, there is kind of like a passive consent to that's true, but that's another thing that we can get into later in the argument. But the key feature is that if you believe that everything should be based on voluntarism, everyone has kind of an obligation to kill themselves.
We don't have an obligation, we have a choice.
Well, no, but like the obligation based off of that like moral feature would be probably that you should kill yourself, because I wasn't, nobody, nobody asked me if I wanted to be born. So
okay, I might need you to run that through me one more time.
Okay. So my parents had sex and made me.
Yes.
I did not choose to be born.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I did not choose to be born. I did not consent to that action. And even though I did not consent to that action, it's probably fine if my parents had sex to make me. Just like it is probably fine for certain involuntary actions that you have to do in society to achieve like a certain like goal.
No.
Okay. So when
no.
So that actually is my argument, right? Where there are things that people generally have to do in a society.
Volunteer to be in this life.
Mm-hmm.
You think that others shouldn't be, or that others like aren't obligated to volunteer to what? Pay taxes?
Well, no, it's like attacking the key principle, right? Where it's like, no, I just explained that poorly. I'm not thinking well. I'm very tired.
Volunteerism?
Listen, I woke up at like 7 in the morning. Okay, so give me a break.
Okay.
All right, so we don't need the share screen.
Yeah. I'll get rid of that.
Sweet.
Okay, cool.
And then I can do these button.
So
okay. So essentially, it's attacking like the philosophical core of the argument, where it's like, Daniel believes that everything should be based on voluntarism, yet he did not, and will consent, right, as a feature of that. Yet Daniel did not consent to be born. Does Daniel then have an obligation to kill himself because he did not consent to the action of being born?
Not an obligation.
Well, no. Obligation based off of your morals. Your obligations are based off of your moral principles.
So
if you are,
that wouldn't even make any sense, because what you're arguing in that argument, you're arguing that I would be the victim. So why would the victim have to pay the consequences of the action?
Well, it's kind of like I did not agree to being born, right?
Right. So why do I have to kill myself because I was forced to be born? Why would I have a moral obligation to kill myself because I was forced to be born?
Well, because you exist now and you did not consent to existing, so you should kill yourself.
Right, but if I'm okay with it now. So this is kind of the idea.
No. That's immaterial. Wait, that's immaterial. Wait, I can't let you.
Okay, so
it's immaterial to the argument.
Let me make because we're kind of arguing thought experience here, thought experiments. So it's kind of like saying if a robber mugs you, right, then you have to kill yourself because he stole your wallet. Like you're saying that I'm the one that force was enacted upon, so why would I have to pay any consequence for force being enacted upon me? Or why would that be any moral? See, so that's kind of the argument, though. This is kind of that, but that's what I'm saying is I'm trying to explain libertarianism here because the argument is
in this world there are going to be things that we don't have to consent to. Or that we
libertarianism isn't arguing that if libertarianism existed, no force would exist. What libertarianism is approaching is saying that this is the circumstances when force is appropriate to be used, right? Okay. And the circumstances when they're appropriate to be used is when it is used in self-defense or defense of another. That is the whole non-aggression principle.
Okay, so then maybe the argument is that you should kill your parents. I don't know.
So you could argue that, in a way, that having a kid is self-defense. Because when you get older, you are going to need someone around. And hopefully, you have treated them well enough and taken care of them enough that they feel the want and need to reciprocate that for you. So it is kind of an investment in your future. Because always and forever, that was the reason people had kids.
So I agree, kind of, but so do you agree that people do not consent to being born and that's okay?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I'm saying you don't consent to being born, but you actually kind of do. But like I said, it's like, but you got to realize it's like you do, but your consent doesn't matter. And that's kind of the thing is it's like, you got to realize that when kids are young, they consent to a lot of things. Well, and you know what I'm saying? And then don't consent to a lot of things. And their consent just generally doesn't matter. You know what I mean? But you did technically.
Essentially slaves. Yeah.
Well, but that's not necessarily the case. I follow a very
you can
weird.
Do anything to your child, the child is kind of not unlike a I believe this, as like a thing, but just kind of like the reality is that children are kind of quote our property until that they are their own property. I know that's a weird way to phrase it. I don't like phrasing it that way. I don't believe that you really own your child, right?
I mean, but some people
the child can't make any decisions.
But this is an argument. This is kind of the thing that I've said before. This is the biggest libertarian gray area. So it's like whenever you find any kind of gray areas and hard situations for libertarians, they always involve kids, and and that's the reason why. It's because kids are unable to consent. Right? Because the whole libertarian argument really stems from body ownership. I own my body, thus I own everything that extends from that. So I own the decision to say what I want to say, believe what I want to believe. And you know what I mean? As long as I'm not harming someone else's body autonomy.
So I would
you see what I'm saying? So
do you want me to give the libertarian argument for that? Because I think I can do that.
Hold on 1 second. Let me finish what I'm saying here.
Yeah, sure.
So when that stems out of if that stems out of the case, right, then the question starts to become with a child is who owns the child's body? And that is a very hard question to answer, as you kind of pointed out. Because to sit here and say that the parent owns the body, then that means that the parent can abuse their child if they want to. It's their child. They own it. If I have a car and I want to abuse my car, I can abuse my car and you can't say fucking damn thing about it. It's mine. You know what I mean? So it's like if you see that as they own it as their property, or even myself, if I want to abuse myself, if I want to just start punching myself in the fucking face right now, you can't say shit about it because it's my body. Right? You know what I mean? And so that's kind of the thing is like, and some people get off on that and love that kind of stuff. You can even consent to someone else abusing you, right? But a child cannot. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like you could even consent to someone else to abuse you. So that's kind of the point is like you even, so the argument goes further. It's like than that. So it goes... in my opinion, like a
Because I
child.
know what to say to this. Yeah.
You know, so you can't say that the person owns the child, right? Or the adult. You can't say that the kid owns themselves, right? And you can't really say that society owns the child too, because then you get into Hitler Youth type stuff.
Well, no. So I think
You see what I'm saying? So it's one of those things that it creates a gray area because
for 5 seconds. Okay, I'm gonna
Go ahead.
listen. I'm gonna be a libertarian for 5 seconds. Okay, so your bodily autonomy is very important, right? But
You're not
in
a
order
real
for your
libertarian.
what?
You're not a real libertarian.
I'm not. Yeah.
I just wanted you to get into character,
No.
really. You know.
Okay. Thank you. I feel very in character. Okay, so great. So I have ultimate bodily autonomy, right? But in order for me to have ultimate bodily autonomy, I need to be of sound mind and body, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So in order for me to be of sound mind and body, my body has to develop up to a certain point. And
Correct.
if my body has not developed to a certain point, I need somebody to take care of me and have a co-ownership of my body/autonomy.
Correct.
So I would say children are in kind of almost a literal sense, they are property, right? Determined by society, right? So this child is mine. It's my child. It is not your child. So the child is my property in a purely theoretical sense. And we have co-ownership over the child. Me and the child have signed a co-lease. Just like a car, I can beat up my car all I want, but if I've co-leased the car with somebody else, it's not really right for me to beat that shit out of that car because somebody else also owns that car.
You want to know how close to a libertarian argument this is? This is identical to the argument that Dave Smith, like libertarian pundit set makes. Basically, he kind of says the same thing. He's saying think about it more like a trust. If you have your kids' money in a trust, you're supposed to take care of that money until they get of age to have that money. You're not supposed to just blow that money or whatever. It's supposed to be treated as theirs. So it's basically you should treat you have the rights to make decisions, but you should try to make decisions in a way they would make them as an adult.
Right. So
I don't like that they call it parental rights. First of all, I think that's bullshit, and I think you're right that does almost make them property. It's more of a responsibility.
Yeah, so it depends on if I'm talking personally or if I'm talking in a purely realistic theoretical sense. So if I'm talking economics, right, I could use the term human capital, but I would never use that in a personal sense because that's that economic term describes a very real descriptive reality. It describes the workforce. And it's something that you're supposed to use in reference for that, and it's an accurate term. Just like how I would say, my child is my property is an accurate term in a theoretical sense, but I would never say that in a personal sense because I think that's kind of fucked up.
I get what you're saying. You're saying that the term is the best term we have. The connotation doesn't help, but the term is just the term that works.
Yeah.
There's a lot of situations I find myself in with that, so I can back you up there.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
The term works, but the connotation doesn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think libertarianism is logically sound. I don't really think.
And that's kind of what I say about progressives in general. I say that they're conservative, but the term works, but the connotation doesn't.
Okay, well, I don't know if I would agree with that, but we can argue about that another time. But okay, so libertarianism. Well, so like you said about the bodily autonomy thing, I think libertarian logic is sound. I don't think that there's gray areas there in terms of children. Even I just don't think it's valid because I don't agree with it. I don't think that the prescriptions that come from libertarianism achieve the things that I would want to achieve in society.
Right. But no, I just call it a gray area. That's what I'm saying is that's where you'll find all of the disagreements within the Libertarian Party. Is within the what do we do about kids? That's all I'm saying. That just generally that's where all the disagreements in the Libertarian Party can be found. It's the same thing with the whole abortion thing. All that that's really where all the disagreements are.
I think my big question for you is if what is like the end goal of your philosophy?
Freedom.
Okay, so
I mean, to be honest, it's like, yeah, like
Well,
literally, like I
that's
just
all I need
like,
because I have a follow up question. But that's all I needed for the follow up question. So, in terms of a society, if I could give you two societies, right, and in one there is total freedom, but largely the society is a failure by the metrics that we would consider it. Like there's a lot of homelessness, there's a lot of crime, people aren't doing very well financially, a lot of people are hungry, like, you know, people aren't educated. But they have the maximum amount of freedom they could possibly have, right? That's one society. Or you can have another society where there is a marginal amount of loss of freedom, but in all the metrics we just talked about, people are largely succeeding. Like, which society would you rather have?
Freedom.
I think number one, I'm gonna say dangerous freedom over peaceful, over quiet, slavery. But that's number one, and number two, I would argue that crime is indicative of not having freedom. Like, you got to realize that when libertarians speak of government, they don't necessarily, unless they're the like noobs that just joined 3 days ago, or have been there for a while and haven't read a single anything by anybody. But like, government is really defined in the libertarian sense as any organization that uses force to obtain its means, right? So if you're talking about a gang, that is the same as a government to us. So it's like, we're not arguing for force to be replaced by private means per se. We're arguing that if you could get to zero force, that's the best. So it's basically, it's telling you where the compass should point. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It just when
I think I got a good analogy.
Okay.
We're evolutionists. We're not eugenicists.
Yeah, we're telling you which way to point the compass. We're not going to tell you what it's going to look like when we get there, because we don't know. It's kind of like the best example is, again, another Dave Smith thing, is he was like, if you were in 1860s and say 1860 and you or not 1860, he said in 1760, and you said in 100 years there's going to be or they're going to be abolishing slavery. We're going to be digging up dinosaur juice out of the ground to power these giant metal machines, and they're going to do all the work for everybody, and we're going to have slavery is just going to start to disappear across the world. You know what they would have said to you? You know how crazy they would have looked at you and said, like, dude, that's fucking impossible. But the only way for things like that to happen is to start taking force off the table. When eBay was first invented, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody were like, dude, this is not going to work, because one guy's going to send junk and the other guy's going to send a check that bounces. It's that simple. Like, we can't trust it. It's anonymous. It's on the internet, right? But then you had ratings and you had this. So fraud, punish it. You can't fucking sell shit if you're below a 4.7. You know what I mean? Like, so it gets to the point where nobody steals from anybody, even though they know they could kind of get away with it at least one time. Because they know they would never be able to get away with it again.
But in fairness,
so there are ways. My point is when you took force off the table, we found better ways of solving the problem. And it's the same thing with marriage. Marriage used to be arranged marriages, right? Mm-hmm. And when we took a force off the table, we started having dating and all of that, and we have happier marriages. Now, we do have more divorce because people feel like they can leave bad marriages. But if you actually look at the way these marriages, there's a lot less people getting beat to hell. You know what I mean? There's all these things. Like, you used to have so much societal pressure, too, that people felt like they had to stay in these bad relationships. You know what I mean? As we removed that, like, a lot of people freak out and they go, all our relationships are... Like, no. People just have forgotten how to create them.
We wouldn't have gay people without removing force.
Very true.
So here's
They'd be in
here's
arranged
my kind of,
marriages.
so here's my kind of issue, Daniel, is that I am not approaching my ideology from a place of like having like purely to have that ideology. I am approaching my ideology based off of outcomes and what I think works best for people. So if you told me that libertarianism,
utilitarianism.
Well, not necessarily.
Well, that's
kind of in some
what
ways.
it sounds like.
Well, kind of in some ways, but that I don't want to use words like that because it leads into
Okay,
a whole
so
nother philosophical
basically what we
argument that I
do-
don't want to get into. But, like, if you told me that libertarianism was the way to get to that society where everybody had those amazing outcomes and everybody was really educated, there was very little crime, everybody has healthcare, everyone goes to the doctor all the time, I would 100% be a libertarian and be like, yeah, 100%. This is like the best way to go. I just don't see that. Like, I don't see that formula for success.
That's because you want utopia.
I want the best outcomes for people. I think
do
that's what
too.
everybody's trying.
I do too.
But Daniel, didn't you just agree that like you would be okay with if people had like worse means if it meant they had a greater amount of freedom?
Correct.
Because I think that freedom is an absolute morality. Like, I don't think you understand how much. Like, I see this. There's a reason that we had people screaming, "Give me liberty" or "Give me death." There's a reason that people stood up to fire hoses for freedom. There's a reason people got beat to death in the streets for freedom. Like, this is not a small thing. This is not something that you give up for healthcare. This is not something that you give up for, little things like that. Like, to me, that's just such a menial, you don't give up freedom for comfort.
So first of all, I would suggest that a lot of those people who were saying like,
you need to read Brave New World, buddy.
I've read a lot of similar things.
Now this
But
is amazing.
Because that's how he predicted that people would take over the world, is through comfort. We would stop caring about what was going on around us. Like, you read Brave New World and then you read 1984, right? And
they're pretty different.
And
I know.
well, George Orwell was actually a pupil of Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley mentored George Orwell.
I actually had no idea about that, and I watched like a whole documentary on George Orwell. I'm very surprised I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's
Aldous
insane.
Huxley was his mentor, and actually his eyesight was screwed, like right around the time when George Orwell finished 1984, and he sent it to him. And actually, George Orwell believed Aldous Huxley said he saw 1984 as a prequel to Brave New World. And that he saw as like that government would eventually get too sick and too tired of using the instrument of force so much and just drown us in pleasure, so we didn't care enough to fight back.
Okay.
And if you actually look at what we're looking at, if you actually look at what we're looking at currently in the world, it does look like a blending of 1984 and Brave New World. Like, it really does. You know what I mean?
Here's my kind of issue, right? Because I agree that like freedom is valuable. I do agree with that. Like, I think almost anyone would agree with that. Maybe not some like very serious communists that I know. Not you, Tawnya, but I definitely.
It's okay. You're good.
Yeah.
Communism isn't a monolith.
Yeah, I know. All of you believe different things. That's why it pisses me off.
Key and Pill.
Anyway,
Key and Pill episode. Every time I hear that, it's not a monolith, I think of that Key and Pill episode. Blacks are not a monolith. I'm a black conservative. That fucking episode is so fucking hilarious.
Can you link me that, by the way? Because I love Key and Peele. But so what I'll say is, like, I think everybody agrees that like a certain amount of freedom is good. So here's my bit, right? there is theoretical freedom and there is actionable freedom. Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah, we live in theoretical freedom.
No, like just Daniel, because like I know this is like very key to his philosophy. Like, do you believe there's like
you're
a
gonna
difference
have
between
to extrapolate exactly what you're saying because I don't
Sure,
exactly
so, like-
understand what you're saying.
Sure, like so I could give you like a grocery store, right? I've used this example a few times in the group. Maybe you've heard me say it. So I could give you a grocery store, and at this, we'll say it's like a Walmart, right? And at this Walmart, there is literally everything in the entire world that you could possibly buy, right? Literally everything. But everything is so prohibitively expensive that almost no one can buy anything from it. So this is like an example of like, theoretically, you could get anything. But in practice, you're not going to pay $10,000 for an apple. Like, even if you had the like ultimate options of anything that you could possibly want, you know, it just doesn't really like matter if there aren't like actions you can use to take it. So one of the reasons that I really believe in like single payer healthcare is that sure, I have all these options in America of like what healthcare I want, but ultimately it leads to not having as much a like actionable freedom as I did in Korea, where it's like I go to the hospital when I'm sick. I feel like I don't have that freedom in America to go to the hospital right now because the penalty to it is so great that it's like it's a theoretical freedom. It's not actionable at all.
What is the penalty for it?
That I have to pay an exorbitant amount of money that I'm not going to pay. I would prefer to not go to the hospital unless it's an absolute emergency, which is something a lot of people in America believe. And I know this like really like blows people's minds. And Tawnya talked about this like way long ago on the other podcast. That's also this podcast, and it's not different. We're just wearing different clothes. Tawnya talked about how like, oh, I don't want people going to the hospital for just little things, but that's what people do in Korea. If you're sick, you go to the hospital. It's like going to the baker or the the grocery store. You need groceries, go to the grocery store. Are you hungry for bread? Go to a baker. Do you need money? Go to the bank. If you're sick, you go to the hospital, even if it's little. I had that mentality even in Korea where I was like, oh, I don't want to go to the hospital no matter what because I was born and raised in America. And my boss would be like, he'd be seeing me with like, snot all over my face and I'm like, wheezing. And he's like, go to the hospital. And I would go and they would give me some medicine and I'd be better in 2 days. That's a freedom that I had in Korea. I could go whenever I wanted, whenever I needed to.
More of a freedom
Tell me.
is learning how to cure yourself.
I did not have to learn to do any of that because I could go to a doctor who spent way more time learning about it than I'm ever going to in my entire life.
You can do it yourself with just basic fucking medicine.
I could not give myself x-rays.
Why not?
What do you need an x-ray for if you have a snot nose?
Well, there are other problems. Like, I'm not saying that, I'm seeking to create a society that will, focus entirely around a cold. It's like whenever I had any problem that was related to my body, I would go to the hospital, even if it wasn't that severe. When my shoulder was hurting in Korea, I went to the doctor and I got x-rays and I found out what was wrong. When my shoulder was hurting in America, I just kind of didn't go to the gym for a few weeks and hoped it went away. And maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't have. Luckily it did, but I didn't actually know that if it was going to get better. And I would have just waited till potentially it got worse.
Yeah.
And that's
I
that.
got thrown off the back of a four-wheeler and never went to the hospital, and my knee is all like jacked up.
Yeah, that's a bad thing.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, but you don't have to be okay with it. You could have a society where your knee is just not jacked up because you had more actionable freedom to take at the time.
It's not that important. I still move around just fine.
This is what I mean about like you have that mentality that I had in Korea where it's like, oh, it's fine if I have like a little issue. It's not fine. You could
I avoid the hospital at all costs, and it has nothing to do with money because I have no problem letting something sit on my freaking credit for 10 years while it falls off. I don't care.
Okay, listen, I don't want a situation where people aren't taking regular checkups to the hospital and they find out they have stage 4 cancer. I want people to regularly be going to the hospital when they're sick, when they need a checkup, just to like check their body out. I mean, it's like it's a matter of, I think that actionable freedom is a lot more important than a theoretical freedom of, well, I shouldn't pay taxes, or I shouldn't, or I should be able to choose whatever insurance I want. It's like, ultimately, I felt more free in Korea, where I was, by a Republican or libertarian standards, being more restricted. I felt a lot more freedom to do what I wanted to do in my life.
I think
And I think
you misunderstood. Like this is something I really.
Daniel first, and then Tawnya. I'm moderating now. Daniel, and then Tawnya will speak, and I'll shut up. I'll do this the whole time, and not respond to Daniel.
This is kind of what I was getting at earlier. Was just simply I was saying that.
I'm not going to talk.
I was saying that, like, if a guy mugs you and then he spends the money on something you would have wanted normally, then of course you would have less of a problem with it. And that's kind of my thing. Is like, again, that's kind of why I started this whole conversation with, like, I really would prefer if this is all they were spending the money on, right? If all they did was tax me and spend it on fucking, healthcare, then I probably would be a lot less vocal and a lot less screamy about all the stuff. But the reason I'm vocal and screamy is because it's all of this other shit that I would never pay for. And that's kind of the point. And then even still, I do believe that if it was even just the healthcare, it would still be a bunch of shit I would never pay for. Would be included in on the stuff. And that's kind of the point. It's like, how do I ensure that only the stuff that I would pay for are included in a thing? The way that I make sure of that is I pay for what I want. And that's kind of the argument that I'm making is like, if I'm voluntarily part of it, then that's the case.
I don't think libertarianism would deny you your society. Libertarianism is actually very diverse. You could have whatever society you want with like-minded people, just don't tread on ours.
Ron Paul worked for like 20 years at like $1 an hour just because, for charity, because he had money and he was fine and he was doing that. Rand Paul, he takes all of his congressional vacations to like impoverished countries and literally cures the blind. Like if you actually go and you look into it, any Austrian economics, any libertarian, anything you can find for free on Mises.org because they've bought all the rights to everything so they can give it out for free. You know what I'm saying? Like, libertarians are very charitable. Libertarians are very charitable. Like, there's a
and that's
meme
respectable,
called,
yeah.
There's a meme called Dicks Out for Liberty. Dicks Out for Liberty memes. It's like a group on Facebook, and they've donated like 7 or 8 wheelchair vans to like paralyzed people. Like, libertarians come together and like really slam the hell out of some causes. And it's insane
that they call the United States of America. Okay, and this United States tries to force all of these communities to comply to their rules. And then you have like these states that are smaller, the bubbles and everything. Like, libertarianism just wants our communities. Like, and you can have your community however you want to, but you can't force me to pay for your stuff. How about you just let my community live? And you can go build your little utopian society where you want to, and I'll build my utopian society where I want to. That's all libertarianism is. That doesn't mean you can't go and get your shoulder looked at by a doctor. That just means that my community, if we don't want to do that, we shouldn't have to pay for it.
Sure. Okay, so like I acknowledge all of that, but I don't really think these things have been shown historically to like have a formula for success.
Hunter-gatherers, bro.
How do you define success?
Well, so first of all, there's a reason. Hang on, okay. There's a reason hunter-gatherers stopped being hunter-gatherers and started being agrarian societies. Okay, society has only gone up since hunter-gatherer society.
Except you still have hunter-gatherer tribes all over the freaking world living their lives.
Yeah, and
Until
I think
a
that
state tries to come in and force them off of their ancestral lands, and
if they have ancestral lands, then they're not hunter-gatherers. They're probably agrarian.
no, they're still hunting and gathering.
They don't have
got the
farms or
Sentinelese.
land?
No.
You got the Sentinelese. They don't even have
They are
fire.
known
It's their land.
And
Sentinelese don't even have fire.
when they put you in fucking concentration camp.
The
And
Sentinelese don't even have fire.
Are they the guys on the one island?
They have fire, but it's captured fire. They literally wait for lightning and then go capture it.
Are they the guys on the island who like don't have any progress? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Was it? Yeah. So what I would say, like, as a formula for success is like the
well,
things
like
that
I said
talked
again,
about, where it's
it
like,
all
so-
depends on what you define as success. Like,
right? Yeah, and I
to
agree
me,
with that.
I would argue that larger countries tend to descend towards war when they start to take large populations, whereas when they tend to be small populations and they focus inward instead of outward, they tend to be prosperous. If you look at like China, when China built a big ass wall around them and said, hey, we're just going to chill inside this wall, they blew the fuck up. It wasn't until they let fucking Genghis Khan in and decided to become a militaristic society that they actually started falling apart again. They were doing great before
Did they really like let him in?
Yeah, they did actually let him in. You didn't know that?
Is that really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Genghis Khan literally means protector of China. Like, he literally strolled up to the Great Wall and he was like, hey, there's some barbarians coming to attack you, but I can protect you, so you should let me in. And so they just opened up the wall and let him in.
I had no idea that that's
yeah, so a lot of people will be like, the wall failed. I was like, yeah, because they opened the door.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I didn't know that particular aspect of Chinese history. That's pretty interesting.
Which is funny too, because they had fireworks, right? They had built fireworks with gunpowder, right? Because they were artistic. They didn't see it as a military thing. And then he saw it and was like, dude, we could blow shit up with this.
Actually, I've seen Mulan, so I know that's not true.
What?
I saw that scene in Mulan, Daniel.
But no, it actually is true. That's literally what Attila the Hun, they figured that out.
Sure. Yeah.
But like before that, they were using it just as fireworks. And he started using it as a weapon. They just used them as rockets, so far as I know. I don't think they built like cannons or guns or anything, but until later. But
I don't know. I think generally most countries that have the means to take power from others typically try to. You know, Japan, England, Mongolia, right?
Us.
And these are not really examples of like large population countries. Spain also, obviously. I'm living proof of that. Wait, I don't know if I talked about this like actually on camera. Yeah, like I'm Mexican. I have a big history.
But that's kind of what I'm saying is when you conquer a spot and you say this is now Spain, those people are now part of your population. So now you're a large population. So you're kind of thinking of the central figures, which I get why you're doing that because they don't own that spot now. But if you consider it the way they considered it, they were getting tax revenue, they were getting money, they were getting resources, they were getting all that. So like they were gaining from being imperialistic over those people. So they were basically imperialism is just it's just slavery on a mass scale.
Yeah, but that's like an artifact of just some people who have power regardless of size trying to increase their size, right?
That's what I'm saying. It's slavery on a mass scale.
Yeah.
It's the best way to look at it. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of all it is you're trying to create them as part of your money, as a money source. So like I said, In my opinion, that again, that's that's stolen money. You're stealing money. You know what I mean? It's just a very, very sophisticated way of doing it. It's just like I said, the whole thing with taxes and all that. It's stealing money. It's just a very sophisticated way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really particularly agree that is stealing money. Like, I get how you think that, but
what do you call?
I don't know.
What do you call if somebody takes something that doesn't belong to them?
I would say that if you grow up in a society where you have massively benefited off of all of these government programs that are funded through taxes as a child and not paying into it with the kind of like assumed promise that you will be paying into it later, and then you advocate for not paying taxes anymore, you've kind of stolen the labor of the people who have kind of given you that advantage in the first place. I think that could be equally argued as much as taxation is theft.
I would argue actually the opposite, because most of the money that is owed has been spent before I was ever born. So I actually am paying a giant debt that I never agreed or had any say in agreeing, or democratic say, or even consent at all before
national debt is a little bit different.
Someone
national
literally.
debt, I think.
So let me ask you this: if I was to want to take, my son he's born, he's right there. If I was to take out a loan in his name for something I wanted, would that be ethical?
Well, so
what if it was a house? What if it was a house that he would benefit from?
I just don't think.
And
that,
then
like,
theoretically, maybe he'll get the house later.
Analogy. I just don't think that like using these.
If I don't sell it and buy something else for myself, which is literally how the government has worked.
So
all of this money that we owe, all that 30 trillion.
Oh my God, Daniel, it's your podcast.
Go ahead,
but please, you gotta let me
go ahead, dog.
Okay. I find that people often use, personal down to earth analogies because they're often very useful. But I think when we're talking about systems that are very particular, like taxation, it becomes very oversimplified once you start doing that, because nothing is very easily directly comparable to taxation. And like when you bring in like, oh, well, what about national debt? It's like, national debt functions as a concept very differently than personal debt. So I don't think those two things are comparable. And I don't think that like taking money from people and taxation are directly comparable, because, they're both very unique. Well, I mean, I guess stealing is a unique thing because you can apply that to a lot of situations. But taxation is a very unique thing. So I think calling it theft is, a very simplistic way of looking at it.
How many?
I mean,
what you're saying is
entire Revolutionary War over taxation. So it's really not that.
Well, it was taxation without representation. We weren't, deciding on where the taxation was the problem.
Do you think that Americans feel represented currently?
You represent
because you can vote. You decide who your representative is.
Who?
I don't know who represents you. Whoever you voted for. Or, I mean, whoever gets in power, depending on who you voted for. But yeah, I mean, you totally have representation.
I get forced this choice on me that I get to I get forced this choice that I can choose this person or this person, and that's representation.
Run yourself.
And if I choose not to participate, I'm not represented.
Well, no, because you can run yourself.
I am running myself. I should be able to run myself. That's the whole point.
No, you can run for office yourself.
We're asking for everybody to run themselves. I know, but
now you're forcing that on me. Like
I'm not forcing that on you. I'm saying you're asking for freedom, but you have so many choices here. You can decide the people who are asking to represent you, or you can say, "Oh no, I want to represent myself."
Let me ask you this.
I don't want either.
Well, it's not limiting. Literally anybody can do this. It's just a matter of like who decides to. You're acting like you. Okay, well then move somewhere else.
And see, that's the whole logic behind this entire system, is that if you don't want to, you can go live outside of the system and you can die. So now you're telling me that I can choose to die.
Well, I don't really think that was very relevant, because you said there's no taxation without representation and that you don't feel represented.
I'm not represented.
Okay, well, you are, because you can vote. You are literally, by definition, okay, whatever your personal opinion is doesn't really matter.
No, it does matter.
I'm an individual.
No, because you live in a democratic society and you're not an autocrat.
I don't live in a democratic society, and
You
now
absolutely
you're
live in a
creating
democratic
false dilemma.
society.
Like now you're creating another false dichotomy where I either get democratic or autocratic. I'm sorry, they're both the fucking same to me.
No, you're saying that I'm not represented because my personal view isn't represented, but like that's not what living in a democratic society is.
Mine and a lot of other people like me. Mine and a lot of other people like me. Danny, is your view represented?
Not really.
Danny,
I will say, let me make this point.
Danny, can you move to a libertarian county somewhere in America right now? Danny, can you move to a libertarian county somewhere in America that would better represent your views? Can you do that? Is there a county in the United States where a local representative is a libertarian and would largely represent what you stand for? Or one that you could run in and your views would be accepted by the public?
Listen here. I think we're kind of getting to the weeds on this. First of all, I think the love it or leave it argument is a very horrible argument anyway.
It's not a love it or leave it argument. That's not what I'm saying.
That's literally what the argument is. It's literally saying either love what you...
You're not paying attention to what I'm saying.
You just said move to a place...
conceptually wrong.
Where...
I'm not,
You just said move to a place... where people agree with me, and that's love it or leave it.
I need you to follow me.
That is literally love it or leave it.
You're following the first thing. You're not going to the second thing that's logical. Okay, you're not making the logical connection. Okay, I need you to make the logical connection.
Because you're the one saying it.
No, because I'm saying that just because you live in a democratic society, you may have an esoteric. You gotta. Let me finish, okay? That's very rude. Don't do that, please.
Can you please be honest, though? This is not a democratic society.
I can't do that. If you like, you gotta engage with me fairly.
Go ahead. I'm trying to.
Well, you're not, because you're interrupting me and saying like my premise is wrong. Okay.
Go ahead.
So we live in a democratic society in which you can vote for things. Just because your personal view, which may or not be very esoteric, isn't represented, does not mean you are not represented. It is the obligation of people who live in a democratic society to make their views known, like expressed to others. With the reason that I said that Danny can move to a libertarian county is because that's a lot easier than saying, Danny, can you start a grassroots foundation in your local county to create a libertarian society around you? Like that. The reason I said move is not a love it or leave it argument. I'm saying because we live in a democratic society and because you're represented, there are, lots of places in America that are probably closely more in line with your views. And just because you have a very esoteric view doesn't mean you're not represented. Listen, okay? I'm a hardcore vegan, animal activist. Listen. I'm a hardcore, vegan animal activist. I don't believe that animals should, be in, I think pets should be illegal. I think that shit's fucked up. That's a radical take. I don't expect anyone to agree with me on that, but I don't think that I'm not represented in America just because I have an esoteric opinion.
All right. So.
Okay.
Do you feel better?
How many people?
Yeah.
How many people need to vote to steal my money? How many votes do you need?
Probably a majority in a democratic society.
So a majority. So there's 3 of us here. So if 2 of you vote, you can steal my money.
If we all live in a society, sure. That, I would say that's ethically, not really, a cool thing to do.
You do realize what that is, though.
So here's
the mob robbing. You see what I'm saying? And here's the biggest thing. Here's the second point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's the second point, though.
Yeah.
Here's another big second point. You also have to realize that the biggest problem with taxation, in my opinion, here's really the big here's the pitch for voluntary taxation.
Okay, hang on.
Right?
Can you pause that right there? I have to pee so hard and I've been waiting so long, but I keep arguing with the both of you. Okay, great. Okay, I'm gonna go pee, and you just keep that thought in your brain, right? And keep saying the word over and over again, because I'm literally gonna pee my pants right now, and that's my American freedom to do that, but I don't want to do that.
You're being detained. All right, guys. I guess while they're going to the bathroom, I'll go ahead and plug our wonderful sponsor. Dr. Ganja is what's supplying this beautiful plant Gandalf pipe right now. They didn't supply the actual pipe. I bought the pipe. But they are what's supplying what I'm putting in the pipe. It is actually some of the beautiful strawberries and cream strain that they have currently. And if you guys go on there and put in Dad Influence as the promo code, they'll give you 5% off and free shipping.
Okay, I'm back first. That means I win any argument that Tanya's not a part of. Okay, hi.
Hey, I know we getting passionate, guys, and I know everybody's listening, and they're like, "Oh, we're all running over each other," because I know, old Johnny Boy was running, and Tawnya both were running me over earlier, and me and Tawnya were kind of trying to steamroll you there for a second there. I mean, but that's what's great about this is we no hard feelings. We're all here in peace.
Listen,
with the peace pipe. Dude, check this out though. Is this a dope ass?
it's really cool. It's really fucking
Gandalf
cool.
pipe.
Yeah, that's actually sick as fuck. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think smoking is terrible. Even marijuana.
I saw it.
Cool. That's just
I
dope.
saw it at the fucking store, and I was like, "Dude, I gotta get this so I can smoke it on the podcast."
Yeah, you definitely look like a like a 15th century wizard. That's way too old. 15th century is really late. I don't know why I overshot that so hard, like an 8th century wizard.
Oh my god, you and your fucking Shire pipe.
Okay, yeah. But if anyone needs to hear it, okay, I love Daniel. I love him. I think he should shave his head. I think he would look really cool bald. But I do love him.
Bro, I'm trying to throw the scent off
I
the
like
Nazi
the
trail.
fact that you've been humanized for me past a Facebook profile.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Yes.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah. Are you cute?
Don't you think he would look super cool with a shaved head with the big beard? I think he would look so cool.
Danny, don't you dare shave your head.
This man's trying to make me look like a Nazi.
He's
trying to make me look like a Nazi.
No, makes you look like a beard.
You're trying to make me a skinhead.
I got a tattoo.
He's trying to make you look like a skinhead, bro.
He's trying to make me look like a skinhead.
Skinheads don't have beards that cool, okay?
And in that way, he can really pick on you and make up all kinds of stories.
Nah, you look like a biker.
He's trying to make his AI video more believable.
I could get I feel like I could get a bald Danny out of AI. You know, I think I could do that anyway.
And please don't make me the conservative.
See, that's why I already know I'm gonna be good to run. See, I was like concerned. I was like, bro, they might be able to pull some stuff up. I don't know. I was wacky as hell when I was a kid. Who knows what they could find? And now I'm all over here like, dude, I'm good. I could just say it's AI.
Yeah.
Shit's fake. AI. I'll just trump it up.
Not even real.
It's AI.
Well, all you have to do is you make sure the footage changes hands at least like 2 times, and then you're like, oh, see, so somebody didn't have the footage the whole time. That means it was gone. I mean, who can say who edited it?
No, everybody's gonna have AI by then. Dude, you can get an AI for your phone right now.
True. Well, your phone is already AI. It's just less developed.
How do we know we aren't AI?
How do I know that you are conscious and having a conscious experience?
You don't.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that wild? I don't know that AI isn't having a conscious experience right now.
Except for the fact that they can't detect human emotions.
That's not true. It doesn't mean they can't have like a human experience. There are humans that can't really detect human. They're autistic people, you know.
Aww.
Yeah. I think they're conscious. I think hot take, Tawnya, hot take. Autistic people, I believe, have a conscious experience. I know you don't believe that.
No,
and you believe that autistic people.
I think autism is trying to break through a new evolution of consciousness.
That's an interesting opinion. I don't think I would agree with that, but
I don't know.
Why do you think that?
Why?
Yeah.
Just we don't know much about it.
Just because they're like unusual.
They're not only unusual, they're like fantastic.
Yeah,
So
like the
it kinda
high
depends on your
functioning
degree.
seem to. There is a
Yeah.
good question about the presence of the savantism and some of the really high functioning autism. Like even in some of the low functioning autism, like I actually had my ex's brother. He had really bad, like he could say one word and it was his name.
Mhm.
And like that dude could play any song if you played a song and you put a piano, he could just play it right there in front of you.
Mhm.
Nobody
really
ever taught him how to play it. Like,
It's impressive. I'm cool with
it's
it.
weird. It's weird for sure. It's something we don't really understand for sure.
My
But it is.
brother, he is so socially awkward, but the man, like, with computers, I don't even know. Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's almost
It's just
wrong to call it a mental disability. It's almost better to call it a social disability.
Yeah,
it's not. I don't think it's
You
a
know what I
mental
mean? Like, if
disability.
anything.
Okay. It kind of depends. So like I knew a guy in my high school, and I'm not gonna say his name because I know this podcast is gonna get really famous. But I knew a guy in high school who was medium functioning, I would say. And I mean, yeah, like the guy knew the name of every actor in any movie he's ever seen, which is incredibly impressive, right? But he also like rocked back and forth like uncontrollably, and as a result had like a really fucked up spine because of it. He would like couldn't really control like the volume of his voice, and he would scream a lot of the things that he would say. He had he had problems going to the bathroom. So there's definitely, I think I'm comfortable calling it a mental disease, but
all of those things seem like social problems.
Disorder. Well, I don't think like the rocking back and forth until like your spine's fucked up is like a social issue, and like he could,
it very well could be a social issue because it very well could come from socialization,
being uncomfortable in the social setting.
And well, not only that, like a lot, it's epigenetics, dude. Like,
hard to tell
how we live our lives.
Like everybody knows we're bro sciencing and throwing spit at dartboards here.
Yeah.
So
I don't expect any of us to like really have like a strong, informed opinion about.
We're over here solving autism.
Yeah, what I'll say is like, I think it probably is a mental disorder, but hey, that doesn't mean we should treat autistic people with any less respect or dignity.
Right.
And it's a big spectrum. And yeah. I know a lot of cool autistic people.
I do too. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's kind of where what I'm saying is that it seems like more of a social issue. And like, if you overlook a lot of the social issues, those are some of the coolest people in the world to hang out with and talk to and get to know and pick their brain. And just like any person, honestly, if you pick their interests, they'll go ham.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
My friend's son, he's so afraid of the wind. He's autistic too, and he's so afraid of the wind. Like, I mean, literally break down and freak out. And they live in North Dakota, for crying out loud. Like, it's windy as fuck here all the time. And so basically, like, he's breaking down and like, but really what he wanted was just weight. He wanted weight, which I found to be quite interesting. So
he's gonna be blown away. I'm kind of scared of the wind now,
especially around this bitch. But every time the wind and like her son, like we had figured this out while we were just hanging out, and and we put like 4 coats on, and he was fine.
Mm-hmm.
because he felt weighed down by something.
That's interesting. If you oh wait, oh shit, that actually makes sense. Yeah, because I just recently learned about like weighted blankets, like how they like really help autistic people. Yeah, I wonder if that's like a common thing.
Yeah,
Huh.
It
That's
is
pretty
very
interesting.
like some of these things, like and I think a lot of it's social because a lot of we don't accommodate it. We don't really know how. That's not fair to say we don't. We don't know how.
Right, that's what I'm saying. We don't really know what we're doing here, but
Yeah,
at the
like
same time, like I do think, like I said, to sit here and write it off as a mental disability rather than, I think it's more, like I said, it'd be more accurately called a social disability. Because, like I said, if you can overlook a lot of the social factors, those are, it's no different than any other person. Like, it's not the same as saying, like, somebody who has, like, some other mental issues where, like, they actually, like, childlike underneath and stuff like that. Like, these people grow into adults. And of course, like I said, I'm not talking about all, autism. I know there are certain types of autism where they do kind of stay childlike and they have stunted growth there. But yeah, I'm kind of ranting.
do you think the government should take care of people with mental illnesses?
He looks so high. He's like, do I think what?
Does the government take care of people with mental illness? Does the government take care of anyone?
Should they?
No.
Should they? So,
I think
like,
they should stay the hell away from them.
If nobody, so like, if nobody's taking care of them, there's like a bunch of like mentally ill
There are
homeless
people
people on the
taking care
street.
of them. It's just not the government.
There's a schizophrenic woman in Kerrville, Texas, who is, I think, to this day, still homeless, screaming on the street, and eats very little.
Well, why isn't the government taking care of her?
I don't know. I don't think that Texas is really a good example of social welfare in the first place.
That's why I said we should probably just move Texas off into the ocean and let them be pirates.
I think that maybe Texas should just be a little more liberal, and we could be like Korea, where there is like no homeless people. That would be awesome.
No, I do somewhat agree, like that they don't really have much regard for people with disabilities at all.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
I do agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you support them raising your taxes?
Neither. I don't think California has any regards for that either.
I think that if I see more of where my taxes are going in my life, or significantly so in the lives of others, I'm pretty comfortable getting my taxes raised out. So, like, for instance, I paid slightly more in taxes in Korea than I would in America, but I was taking the bus almost every day. I could go to the doctor whenever I wanted. I didn't see homeless people. There was very little crime. I felt like my taxes were doing something. So, I don't really care.
That doesn't happen here.
No, yeah, I know. And I want it to. I want the government to be better. Because I don't think America's government's very good in a lot of ways. But I think it's also pretty good in a lot of ways also. Because, like, we have a really strong separation of powers. And that's awesome. It's like one of the best parts of America, I think. But it also causes issues.
That's okay. I mean, most things do.
Yeah,
there's always going to be issues.
It's fine. Like, there's trade-offs to it. I think it's pretty cool. I'm glad that we have a very strong separation of powers. Oh, also, everyone in Korea is like fucking educated as hell. They're like overeducated, and they need more immigration. That's something that's a policy I would change in Korea. By the way, I would highly suggest Koreans improve a lot of low-skill immigration. Because one, people from the Philippines and Thailand and Vietnam really need it. And two, everyone in Korea, like 97% of the population has a college degree, and everyone feels like they're too fucking overqualified
Good for the lower service jobs.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like everyone feels like they're too good for it, and in some ways they am. They am. In some ways they are because they're kind of like overqualified. They're qualified for different things that are done in certain ways. So they should have more immigration. And I think that would be awesome. I big approve. More, please, immigration, Korea.
Are you open borders or closed borders?
It really depends on what you mean by open borders.
I mean open.
Like
free travel.
I
you
think
can come here, you can plant wherever you want to, you can.
I think that people should sort themselves out economically wherever they feel like they should. And I don't. So, like, by open borders, I would largely agree with that in that people should, come and go wherever they want to. But I also think you should, probably be checking if there are, like, child traffickers coming into your country. So I think everybody should, like, have to have a passport and be looked at by immigration, but I think it should largely be an easy process.
Like borders cause child trafficking.
Well, by definition, kind of, if we're talking about international child trafficking, but not necessarily in that, I think children are always going to be kidnapped. That's kind of, it's like a fucked up reality, but yeah, I think that's...
It is.
Because there's just some messed up people in the world. I don't want them to exist, but they do. So yeah, I would say,
and that's kind of the libertarian argument. That's kind of where I go back to the volunteers. What I was saying before everybody ran off to the bathroom. But that was kind of the big pitch though from taxation side is that, like, let's just be real. I think we can all agree that maybe 20-30% of the money that we pay in taxes, we agree with where it's going. You know what I mean? So the rest of that, and then and that's all of us. Now it might be a different 20%. You know what I'm saying? But maybe 20% of it we agree with where it's going. You see what I'm saying? And then that would be
like a little system where we decide how much goes into taxes that we're going to pay, where we get to, like, we have it set aside in like a little whatever, savings something, whatever. And then we get to, like, choose, hey, mine goes here. Okay, mine goes here. Okay, mine goes here. Mine goes here. Instead of having the government choose that for us.
Well, what I'm basically kind of saying is I'm saying that, like, if the people who wanted to fund healthcare weren't getting wrecked on paying for wars, then they should be able to fund healthcare. And if the people who wanted to fund, you know what I'm saying? If the people who wanted to fund border security, you know what I mean, and build a damn wall, had that money, they could build their damn wall instead of bombing brown people in some crazy country. That's the kind of thing is like, I think that a lot of this concern would start to be aimed a lot more inward and a lot less outward. And I think that would cause a lot more of our money to be spent on helping each other out instead of, like I said, killing. Like, if you look at, like, the money per citizen, like, we spend like $1,000 more per citizen than Canada.
That sucks.
And Canada has universal health care that isn't even functioning well. It's like fucking a money hole there.
That's
so, like, the reason...
Yeah, I'm talking about economically.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying economically, it's a money hole. It's not doing great. Like, they're spending a lot comparatively to other healthcare systems that are universal. That's kind of what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
That's a fair enough criticism,
And I'm saying, so, like, you look at that, and then you look at the fact that we don't have any of that stuff, and we're paying way more per citizen. And I don't mean for healthcare. I mean for everything. What they spend on each citizen is way more in Canada, in the U.S. And the reason why is because most of that money is going overseas, blowing somebody up.
If I had a choice what to do with my taxes, Jonathan, you would be able to go to the hospital anytime your nose ran.
So I don't actually know if that's true because I have no idea what that system actually looks like in practice. And I feel like it would probably result in a lot of people voting for things that they like and probably not voting for things that they don't think about or don't see. So, you
never know.
Well, like if you don't go
to praxis should never be based on theory.
I agree
that's
with
kind
that.
of my
I think
point.
we should try
So
out systems.
that's kind of the point that I'm making. Taxes would go to things that people felt were a priority, rather than things that people didn't feel like were a priority.
I know,
and
but
so
I feel
then
like
the
there's a lot of
obligation
things
would
that we
be
don't
to
think
explain
about.
to them that it's a priority, which is what you're saying you're doing in a democratic system. But it's not really what you're doing. You have a Republican system. So what you do is you run somebody, and then you convince the one guy that's in charge to do the thing you want him to do.
Okay.
So that's really what it is. You're really narrowing down who you have to
give me some charitability. A Republican society is a democratic society. It's
a republic is a type of democracy.
Yeah,
but a democracy is not a type of republic.
I agree. Yeah.
So that's kind of the argument that I'm making.
Yeah, obviously.
So the point I'm saying is when you have a republic, that actually centralizes the power into that one person that now can be converted, rather than having to convert the masses. What I'm actually arguing for is democracy. You're not. You're arguing to centralize the power outside of democracy. I'm saying let the people themselves choose where their money goes. That is democracy.
So I don't think that generally
that's direct democracy.
Well, yeah, I know. I generally don't think that system works because most people do not have the time to be so politically engaged and well informed on every single issue that
so they'll spend their money on what they feel matters to them.
You have the time to be able to do that.
Oh man, I would love that. First of all, okay, voting day should absolutely be a holiday. Yeah. Can we all agree with that? Can we agree with that? Do all of us agree that voting day should be a holiday?
Yeah, nice. And paid for.
Okay.
And paid for.
Well, I mean, paid holiday. Yeah, I mean, it should be a paid holiday. Yes. Absolutely. Otherwise, it's not a real. Otherwise, it's not a real holiday.
Fucking day. 12 hours.
True. Yeah. In Korea, it's a paid holiday, and I couldn't even vote, and I was allowed to leave early, and that was awesome. Wait, no, I mean, I didn't even go to work. I mean, yeah.
With that said, even though I do have like this little, ideological war going on with progressives, there are things that I do appreciate that progressives promote.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Of course. I mean, they are lefties.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. It's not that I disagree with the sentiment behind universal health care. Because like I said, I have epilepsy myself. You know what I mean? And I've had both insurance and, the situation before insurance where I've had to pay for the shit out of pocket myself. So I definitely understand both sides of the situation in America. You know what I'm saying? I'm nowhere near a rich man. I promise you that.
I don't know, man. I see that shelf. That looks like a nice shelf.
You know what I'm saying, dog? Moving up in the world. But, I'm just saying, I'm nowhere near a rich man. I mean, honestly, you can see by the size of this room, it's not very large.
I don't know.
I also think that people like Elon Musk shouldn't have enough money that can build the entire fucking Eiffel Tower.
I don't think that. I have a question on that point. Is that okay if I ask a question on that point?
Good.
Okay, so let's say that all of the proletariat, all of the working people had their material conditions met, would you still care about how much money that Elon Musk has?
Probably.
Okay. I wouldn't at all. I don't think I care at all, as long as people are taken care of. I think it's pretty fucked up that we have, people who have a shit ton of money and have a lot of people suffering, and
I also
don't just creates.
I would actually agree with that. I actually
material needs were met that Elon Musk would be able to have.
Maybe, but if both were possible, I wouldn't care.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I see it too. Like, as long as everybody's doing good, I don't really care if anybody has more.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
So where's
And that's-
Not much, though. He has powers that I don't like the power structures.
Well, that's
sure.
kind of the thing, though. Is in my opinion, if you had a free market, people honestly, Elon Musk would be nobody.
Broke.
Elon Musk, the only reason Tesla's been profitable is because of tax rebates that he gets from being a electric vehicle company. And then if you look at like Blue Origin, like if you go look at all of his companies, it's all just fucking tax loopholes that's like making him profitable.
I actually kind of love that though. Okay, I think tax rebates on electric cars, fucking brilliant. I think that's great.
But that's kind of the point that I'm making is the only reason that the man had the money to buy Twitter is because the government gave him that money. To be fair,
kind of. Well, no, they just made it,
and
where
it's
this company was able to
and
be
it's
profitable,
not
because that company would not be profitable otherwise, right? But tax
correct.
rebates exist.
That's kind of the point that I'm making. So they created an industry that would not have existed.
Is profitable or not
correct.
Not theirs.
Exactly, and that's kind of my point. This is kind of the argument that I'm making. Is like this kind of stuff will happen all the time in the market, right? And then people literally have the goal to literally go, look, capitalism's failing. And it's like, that's not capitalism. When you're literally propping up a business and other businesses are having problems competing because this business is getting favoritism from the government, that's not capitalism.
You're squashing
that's
innovation.
Fascism.
Well, you're not squashing
that
innovation.
Is fascism.
So let me explain. So, in order for early technologies to progress at all, they either have to be done by the government, which I feel like you would have a problem with. Well, maybe you, Daniel. I mean, you're kind of both libertarians, right?
I'm a little more left-wing libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, left-wing libertarian, but I know he's kind of more like the American style, whatever, and you're like the Italian, whatever, fuck. Whatever. Anyway. Yeah, so like in order for like progress of an early technology to happen, it would kind of either have to be done like by the government itself, or we would need to have a private company which the government kind of funds a little bit, because a private company is never going to produce a product that is not profitable. It would be kind of ridiculous to ask Elon Musk to be like, okay, well, go make your like electric cars that are really expensive to make and aren't really like profitable on their own, for years and years and years and years and years until they become efficient enough to sell. Like that would be kind of like a really big ask on businesses, which is why governments give tax rebates to things like that, right?
Here's where
it allows progress to go faster.
Here's where I'll come in and simultaneously illustrate why patents and the government is bad. Okay. So let me explain using a great man named Bo Burnham. Have you ever heard of Bo Burnham?
I have, actually. I've seen all of his specials many times, okay?
Okay, so you've heard Love Is.
Yes.
Do you remember him talking about rape whistles?
Yes.
So you got a guy who starts a company making rape whistles to reduce the rate of rape. But then he doesn't want to reduce it at all, because if the rape rate declines, he'll see an equal decline in whistle sales. Right? Mm-hmm. So this is the problem with monopolization, right? That's the only way that exists, right? Because the greediest capitalist will just say, I don't care. I'm going to make the money. If that guy's going to make a shitty whistle, I'm going to make a better whistle and make all the money. And if all the rape goes away, I'll do something else. That's what you see what I'm saying? When there's competition, competition. But if you have a patent on rape whistles and you're the only one that can sell rape whistles, now you can make a shitty rape whistle, so that way it doesn't do that good of a job, thus increasing your whistle sales, right? And this is exactly what happens in the government solves a problem. They don't do a great job at it, because if they actually fix the problem, they stop getting funding. right? If
So
you're
I
the
have a
guy
question.
that's hired to fix homelessness in San Francisco and you fix homelessness in San Francisco, you have just fired yourself.
Yeah, that's why government services exist, in my opinion, because they don't exist to make a profit. They only exist for a certain goal, and once that goal is complete, then they can be complete.
Right, but that's why they're never complete.
Whatever. Well,
But that's my point, is you've created a profit incentive for an individual to not fix a problem.
So like the idea is,
you see what I'm saying?
Where you're going with this argument, I don't really know. Like, I guess it's not really relevant to what I was going to say. I was going to talk about how like it's kind of okay to shell money on government services because they exist for a particular purpose in society, not really like as a benefit. But I don't think that's really relevant to what you were saying.
Do you get? But you get kind of my point. Is with government, you literally have a profit incentive, and this is kind of why government makes so many crises. It's because the profit is in the crisis. We need a new war because that's how we get money from the weapons company. We need a new virus because that's how we get money from the pharmaceutical companies. That's why the monkeypox thing came right after the other thing. It didn't get they weren't able to blow it up. But like even before that, there was always some new virus that was coming out. There was, the swine flu or the, bird flu or the whatever.
Is
like
we have to fund Elon Musk to make these batteries, which
hell yeah,
pretty detrimental to the freaking environment, by the way.
By the way, lithium batteries also exist in gas-powered cars. They just use more lithium.
Exactly. I mean, that doesn't matter to me, but it's like
okay. Well, why did you bring it up?
Now, if the government is like regulating all of this, and they're sitting there and they're pushing everybody on green energy as well, like, and they're destroying the environment to create green energy
because there's a lower environmental impact on those lithium batteries because they don't produce as much carbon as a gas-powered car. You do create the issue of like in those local areas, the mining projects, they're not great, right? But those mining
No. They actually cause a lot of mass migration, a lot of disease. They are poisoning indigenous people. They are poisoning.
Tawnya, let them finish.
Let me finish. Okay. Thank you. Cool. Okay. So while they cause problems in those local areas, they're overall a net positive towards environmentalism because again, those mines still exist whether or not you have electric cars. They exist with gas-powered cars, and while again, like electric cars use more lithium, they also don't produce air pollution.
Or we could just say fuck cars.
Okay, yeah, I mean that would be awesome.
You got to realize that also just another point that lithium is, called a rare earth mineral for a reason. And that if you're using something that uses a lot of lithium and you have to, replace it every 10 years, you're running the risk of running out of it a lot quicker than you would run the risk of running out of oil.
Yeah, it's true, but electric cars don't have to be run on lithium batteries, as I'm aware.
Honestly,
it's the most efficient metal for them.
Why don't we meet in the middle and do nuclear cars? Let's do thorium cars, right? We'll do thorium. We'll use the LSR reactors. You know what I'm saying? It'll be awesome. You never have to fill your car up at all.
So as I'm aware,
and you don't need a battery.
So as I'm aware, nickel is also an alternative to lithium batteries, and a lot of electric cars are already made with nickel. I know that a little bit because a PragerU video brought it up to me, and it made me talk to my friend who is way more intelligent about scientific things than I am. But he talked about how lithium and nickel are both used a lot in electric cars.
They are.
And they're not you know, again, mines are great for the environment.
But how are we going to make our money? How are we going to make our money if we put all the nickel in the batteries?
I don't know, man. Like, how are we gonna make all the radio if there's television around? Like, it's like, you know, society changes and improves.
And then I'm over here like, why the fuck do we need all this stupid shit in the first place so that we can create environmental problems and have to so-called fix it?
Because we're making there's much less of an
carbon capture?
impact.
Why don't we just carbon capture and call it a day?
There is an environmental impact.
I know there's less of an environmental impact, and progress is important, and we can't just stop doing things.
Why is it important?
Because generally people like to live a higher quality of life, because the computer that you're talking to me on either has a gold or nickel battery in it right now.
I'm aware.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I don't know, you probably enjoy using this computer, right?
I could do without it.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to. I really enjoy using the computer and the internet and cars.
We're selfish, greedy little assholes, all of us, including me. We get to destroy the environment and pretend like we care about it at the same time.
Well, to a degree, I want the environment to be destroyed as little as possible in achieving my goals. That's why I'm a big advocate for green energy. And I used to be a big advocate. That's why we're going
nuclear.
That's why I used to be a big advocate for nuclear energy until I talked to that very smart science friend.
What's wrong with thorium?
The issue with nuclear reactors is they require a lot of infrastructure. Infrastructure that would take a long time to be built, and then the amount of time it would take to build these nuclear reactors all across the United States. Green energy will have almost like reached the point of being as efficient as nuclear. So like, what's the point?
And not only that, like, it would just take one little fuck up and.
Also,
but you're looking at uranium reactors though. Thorium reactors don't blow up.
That doesn't matter.
I mean, it doesn't matter to my argument either. Like,
and the waste that comes from them too is not.
It's cesium, and it's a lot less, and it has a lot shorter half-life, like 300 years.
Like, I feel like we're playing the fucking trolley problem over and over again here. Like, I feel like that's
one. That's the beauty of philosophy, and two, like in terms of nuclear, I have no issue with it in terms of efficiency. It's just a matter of, you know, the infrastructure required. Like, if we lived in France and we already had like all the nuclear reactors around, I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's go nuclear. It's really efficient.
I think you misunderstand how much. See, a lot of the infrastructure that needs to be built around nuclear is due to the hyper dangerous nature of uranium reactors. And the reason we used uranium reactors in the first place is because the byproduct from uranium reactors is plutonium, which you can use to make bombs. Whereas the byproduct from a thorium reactor is cesium, which you can't use to make bombs. But cesium is, it's a lot more radioactive than plutonium, but it has a lot shorter half-life. So
that makes
sense. It actually will work. It'll actually deactivate in human or decay in human timescales. So you're not talking about something that you can deal with forever. You know what I mean? You're talking about something that you have to deal with.
Yeah, it's just like.
So you're talking about something that's a lot more renewable and a lot more. You know,
and if you want to build some nuclear reactors in places, I'm fine with that.
And this is something that, like, you would
energy that's more of a long-term investment.
This is something that they were talking about. Like, they can build these nuclear reactors inside of like shipping containers. So, like, if you had a situation like in Texas, they could literally just airdrop a reactor and have the power right back on within hours. Or, like, in humanitarian efforts, they could literally just show up and drop these guys, you know, and now this tribe that never had any way of getting electricity now has power. Kind of in the same way that solar panels have been able to be deployed before.
And so, like, I'm very cool.
And not just a little bit of power, like massive amount of power, like power to be able to be industrialized.
Like a Rubik's Cube full of Well, I mean, is it thorium, where like a Rubik's cube size of thorium will like power all the energy I'll need for my entire life?
Yeah, it was like a softball size. Yep.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So like, I know it's really efficient, and I'm down for nuclear power. I think it's a little bit. I think it's kind of an issue in a democratic.
But that's what I'm saying. They could put like a marble
to like.
You could put like a marble, a freaking, a small marble-sized piece of thorium inside of a car, and now that car runs for its entire life, and you never fill it up. You never plug it in. You never charge it. You never. Now, how is that for efficient? You're not mining up new materials. You're not doing any of this stuff. The thing about all this green infrastructure is it costs a lot of oil to use. Like, you still got to get the stuff. You still got to get the stuff all around. You still got to.
Wouldn't the same be true of nuclear power though? Because you still have to build the stuff.
What do you mean?
Well, like if I had to build like a thorium plant, I would still require like gas-powered vehicles and.
Well, yeah. I'm not necessarily saying that, but I'm saying that the payoff is right now you're trying to build infrastructure in the hopes that later you can update it to the better infrastructure that will be better stuff, right? So that's kind of the argument. Like, I'm saying you're not trying to build the thing that works now, and then later, if this other thing works out, build that. That's kind of the point that I'm making.
I just think it's
saying that.
Yeah, like, and I understand that. And again, like, if that's the case, I am totally cool with that. Right? Like, again, I'm totally on board if that is what anything is going to like end up as. I'm not like ideologically bound to green energy. I'm not like fucking.
And I also think it's kind of crazy to think that nuclear will stay stagnant in its efficiency, and then all these other ones will catch up to it, as if the other technology won't, progress as well.
Well, yeah, but it's like it's inherently a more renewable source, right? Like one uses up like a thing that is there, and like another one's like wind and solar, which is just perpetually exists.
Thorium's like 50% of the Earth's crust.
Oh, listen, I realize there's a lot of it. Right? It would require like mining, which you don't have to do with the other thing. It would just like eventually become.
We don't really even have to mine it too, because we have a bunch of it already. It's already been mined.
Listen, I get it.
You mine it when you get your uranium.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, it's pretty late. But I will say, just before I go, that I'm not ideologically bound to anything. Whatever works. But I think there is a very good reason that China is looking into green energy rather than nuclear. And I think that we should probably try to stay.
Nuclear is green energy.
Yeah, okay, I know, but they're looking for they're looking more into wind and solar, But regardless, anyway, I've had a fun podcast, and I love you guys.
All right,
thanks for talking about
it. Thanks. Amazing.
Thanks for coming on and proving that I was right about everything, guys.
Thank you for making progressives not so bad for me anymore.
No problem. I'm glad I could seem not totally insane, except for my animal take, which I'm sure sounds totally insane to you guys.
Actually,
I got a bunch of pets.
Huh?
I actually agree with you.
So what did Daniel say? Yeah,
I said I got a bunch of pets, so yeah, I do disagree.
That's actually my key consent argument, but we'll get into that another day if you want to. It's fun.
Trust me, I can promise you that cat consents, because that cat could leave at any point.
Yeah,
that cat has no problem eating on its own. It is always eating a fucking chipmunk or something it's done caught. That cat has no problem eating on its own. That cat is there because it wants to be.
I got a big box of arguments that I've thought about for a long time. It's a whole bit, but yeah, we'll do that another day. 100%. Yeah. Okay.
Like it's not a mind blower to me. I fucking get it.
Mm-hmm.
The whole animal and domestication and
okay. Anyway, but we need to sleep. Okay. Thank you for agreeing with me. I love you. We'll talk about it another time. Okay.
All right. Peace, my people.
Good night, everybody, and good morning wherever you are. Bye.